Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of Columbia Association's Board of Directors for tonight, February 26th. Colin is not here, so I will be chairing the meeting. I'll be conducting it in alignment with our procedures, code of ethics, our civility policy, and Robert's Rules of Order. Board members will be recognized up to 2 times per motion, with priority given to those who haven't yet spoken. As always, let's continue to engage respectfully, stay focused on the agenda, and work towards a productive outcome for the community. Now I'm going to do the roll. Ashley is not here. Bill?
Here.
Colin's not here. Delilah?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Wes is not here. Karen?
Here.
Reg?
Here.
Sky?
Here.
I'm here. John?
I'm here.
All right. A reminder to everyone that the video is being recorded and being broadcast live to YouTube and will be available to view online. Anyone using the link to the meeting on CA's website will be able to see and hear the proceedings. If you haven't already, please silence your phones or other noise-making devices. And for board members, please remember to turn on and off your microphone. Now for the announcement of closed meetings. CA's board held a closed meeting on January 8th at 6:30 at CA headquarters. Members present were Sky Anderson, Reg Avery, Karen Emery, Delilah Holmes, me, Eric Greenberg, Bill Santos, and Colin Sullivan. Other staff present were General Counsel John Kuchno and Director of HR Monica McMillan Ajayi. The vote to close was unanimous, 7-0, and it was closed in accordance with the Maryland HOA Act. Items 1, 2, and 4, so matters pertaining to employees and personnel, consultation with staff, 1, 3, and 4, relating to personnel, consultation with legal, and consultation in connection with pending or potential legal matters. And just an administrative note, that was one that we tried announcing last time, but just didn't have all the information on it. So that's kind of gotten announced 1.5 times now. CA's Board of Directors held a closed meeting yesterday, February 25th at 7:01 p.m. at CA headquarters. Members present were Sky Anderson, Reg Avery, myself, Eric Greenberg, Delilah Holmes, Bill Santos, and Ashley Vaughn. Other staff were John Kuchno and Monica again, and consultants Lisa McKeon and Nina Dixon from Nonprofit HR. The vote to close is unanimous, and the meeting was closed in accordance with the HOA Act under provisions 1, 3, and 4 again. All right, now on to the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
I second it.
Any discussion? Eric?
Yes. First, I request that the easements come off the consent agenda.
Okay, you don't need to do that. We can just move it off when we get there.
Okay. And second, I move to strike item 8E from the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion?
8B is.
8
8E.
Echo.
8 Echo.
Any discussion?
Yes. So I just want to say this. I'm not sure how this got placed on the agenda. So it never showed up in our board topics log for this year. The BOC never discussed it. So I'm confused why this is on the agenda, especially when we have a letter that's almost 2 years old. I'll say this about Andy. We might have had our disagreements, but
This is for the agenda topic, not for the content of the discussion itself, Eric.
I realize that, but I'm going to say this. The one thing we agreed on was process, and it's important to follow a process. And so I feel like just putting this on the agenda item here is short-circuiting our process, which goes through the board topics log and the BOC, and I think we should be adhering to our process. So I move to strike 8E.
I already seconded.
Yeah, I know. Any other discussion? As Eric pointed out, this request was made over 2 years ago, so I think it's pretty timely to continue having it. Go ahead, Bill.
Just a quick follow-up that this is a discussion topic only. We're not taking a vote on this.
Correct.
I don't have a problem, so long as, you know, if we're here past 10:30 and this is still on the list, I may make a move to strike at that late hour.
Well,
I
let's
think
keep
if there's
going.
time on the agenda to discuss this, I'm okay with it.
Karen?
If it's just a discussion topic, it's under new business, right? That means it's going to come up for a vote eventually. Let's just take it off.
Eric, second time?
Yeah, so, I mean, we have a process. We need to follow that process. And what are we doing? How did this get on here? I mean, you say it's 2 years old. Well, we've got other things on the agenda topics log that have been languishing there for at least that long. And so I don't understand why this item supersedes all the other items on the agenda topics log, including important key policies that we should be looking at. That's the issue here. Why does this just jump to the front of the queue when we have important policies to be looking at on the agenda topics log that are again being delayed because other things are superseding it? So I think we have a process. I think we have a good one, but we need to be adhering to it.
Okay, anyone else? All right, so I'm going to call the question. A vote yes will support Eric's amendment to strike that agenda topic. A vote no will keep that agenda topic on the agenda. Everyone understand? Okay, Bill,
No.
Delilah,
No.
Eric,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Reg,
Yes.
Sky,
No.
and I will vote no. Motion fails. Any other motions for the agenda? Okay, I'm going to call the question on the agenda. So this is a vote to approve the agenda. Again, a vote yes is going to approve the agenda as presented. A vote no will not approve it. Bill,
Yes.
Delilah,
Yes.
Eric,
No.
Karen,
No.
Reg,
No.
Sky,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. The agenda is approved. All right, now for Columbia update.
So Jeremy is going to give the board an update on the Chesapeake Bay Trust Grant.
Okay, excellent. CA has been a leader in watershed stewardship for a very long time, and the Chesapeake Bay Trust is an organization that provides funding for both capital projects as well as programs to improve the quality of the bay by focusing on projects within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Over the last 6 years, our team has been successful in receiving about $150,000 in grants from the Chesapeake Bay Trust. These are competitively awarded grants. It's tough to get them. They have to be really strong proposals, really strong justification, really resilient environmental impact and benefits for the Chesapeake Bay. About 2 years ago, we submitted a grant application for an innovative combination of a walkable pollinator garden as well as a bioretention facility near Lake Elkhorn. That grant was awarded for the design that the Chesapeake Bay Trust paid for. Subsequently, we applied for another competitive grant award to actually build that facility, which we have won. So that was a $107,000 grant from the Chesapeake Bay Trust to construct this innovative combination pollinator garden as well as walkable bioretention facility near the spillway at Lake Elkhorn. So just sort of celebrating the fact that we received $100,000 from the Chesapeake Bay Trust to build this facility, which sort of brings our total over the last several years to about $250,000 worth of funding for watershed projects within our community. So, and we're excited to start that project this spring, hopefully completed by the end of the fiscal year.
Thanks, Jeremy. Anything else, Sean?
No, that's it.
Okay, so we're now going to move on to resident speak out. So as previously shared, this is a time for residents to offer constructive, respectful input on the issues before the board. I ask that everyone follows our code of civility. Personal attacks, disrespectful behavior, defamatory remarks, and discriminatory language won't be tolerated. Speakers who violate these rules will be asked to stop and forfeit their time. We actually only have one individual tonight, and that's Shana. Is she here? I don't see anyone online. Okay. So never mind, we don't have residents speak out tonight. All right, so now is the consent agenda. Eric has already objected to the Cradle Rocks easement, so that'll go on to old business. Any objection to approving the draft minutes, though? Okay, hearing no objection, the consent agenda is approved. So now we're going to go into old business. We're actually going to have the easement request first. Sean?
Yes, Jeremy can speak to the easement request.
Excellent. Yeah, so this is associated with the Complete Streets easement request that the county staff were here presenting on 2 weeks ago. So this is for Cradle Rock Drive, and the easement request is basically for an extended speed bump area at the drive lane, at the bottom of the hill of the drive lane that leads up into the Owen Brown Community Center.
Can I get a motion to approve the easement request?
I'll move to approve the easement request.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say this. Easements should not be on the consent agenda. They represent, they basically represent land deals, and they represent usage of our land. And they're fairly serious, and they're fairly important. So when we look at easements, we need to make sure that.
Eric, the topic is the Cradle Rock Complete Streets improvement. It is not a topic about how we address easements or discussions.
Yes, so-
You have something about the complete streets.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
So I think it's important that when we look at this easement, that we look at it in terms that it is done for the social welfare of Columbia, as it says in our packet and in the resolution, and that is being done for the civic betterment of the community. And the way I look at it is, yes, it is. There is some potentially a minor hiccup, and there could be some issues. But in the long run, safety will trump that, so I think this is an important easement to approve.
Any other discussions?
I just got a quick question. As far as the valuation method type that's listed here, I just want to make sure that the text that's presented sounds like it could equally apply to the pathway easement that we had considered for the bicycle plan. And I just wanted to make sure that this is, in fact, the one that we wanted to use. Is this the correct language?
I believe it is. I'd have to go back check with staff, but I think it is consistent in terms of it being, for the public betterment of the community. Yeah.
Right, yeah, it certainly says that. It's just, it's a little ambiguous, and I just want to make sure that we were using the right language.
Okay.
So if we could just check on that.
Sure.
Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? Eric?
So Bill, that language,
Excuse me, please address the chair.
so Mr. Chair, is the language that my friend from Wild Lake suggested, is that in the resolution, is that consistent with the charter, or does the language need to be redrafted? Is that what you're suggesting?
Oh, hold on.
You can only talk to Michael, Bill.
Anyone else want to jump in here? Do you want to jump in, Bill?
Sure, I would love to jump in.
Okay.
Mr. Chair. It's not anything that is contrary to our charter or anything. I just wanted to make sure that it was the correct language for this particular project, that's all.
Any other discussion on this topic? All right, I'm going to call the question. Bill?
Yes.
Delilah?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Sky?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Approves unanimously. It was on the consent agenda because at our last meeting, no one had any feedback on it whatsoever, and obviously no one tonight objected to it either. So we're going to go on to old business, the meeting schedule.
Point of order.
Go
I
ahead, Karen.
don't think it's fair, if you're not going to allow someone to talk slightly outside a topic, for you to then lecture us. I think that
That's not a
falls-
point of order,
I think that
Karen.
that it is. It
You're
fall-
overruled.
You fell out,
Karen,
you fall
you are
outside
Karen,
the lines
you're
of
out of order.
civility.
Point of order,
Karen, you are out of order.
I am not.
point of order. She has the right to speak at the board. She's a board member, she's got the right to speak.
That's not a point of order. You're overruled. Sean?
Yes, so the next item, as we presented at the last board meeting, was the governing documents, specifically the FY27 board meeting schedule. It is included in your packet. If the board wanted to address anything within that or have any discussion around it, it's here on the agenda.
Any discussion on these, the meeting schedule? Karen?
Yeah, Sean, knowing all the work that the staff has coming up in this next year, is this sufficient amount of time for you and senior leadership to be able to come in front of the board and make sure that the residents are fully informed of the activities that the Columbia Association has going on? Or will this be a challenge to the transparency and accountability that the residents expect?
Go ahead.
Senior leadership has reviewed this schedule. We have no issues with the schedule. We don't anticipate any issues meeting any of their agenda items or discussing anything that comes up throughout the year. So no, this agenda is pretty flexible enough. And there's enough space in here for us to conduct the meetings as presented.
Eric? Oh, I'm sorry, Sky?
I just have 2 points. First of all, there are at least 2 months between a couple of board meetings in a couple of incidents. One, there's 10 weeks without a board meeting. I just want everybody to be aware of that. And I forgot my second point.
Okay. Anyone else? Eric, go ahead. No, go ahead, Eric.
Okay. To jump on my friend from Hickory Ridge's point, Mr. Chair, yes, there are some large gaps, especially when you consider town halls where no board business actually gets done. It's more of a staff presentation. So that creates huge gaps, especially if there's a debut and then a vote many, many weeks later, as you pointed out. So what we should do is turn the town halls into actual meetings. So I'm going to make that motion first. I move to make both town halls standard board meetings.
Just a point of clarification, there's no vote tonight on this?
I can make motions.
Eric, this is a 3-reading rule issue.
I realize that. I'm not moving to pass this. I'm moving to amend the schedule, adjust the schedule. So the next meeting, we can vote on the amended schedule.
Go ahead.
So I move to change both town halls to actual board meetings,
I will
regular
second that.
board meetings.
Any discussion? Go ahead, Eric.
So as my friend from Hickory Ridge noted, Mr. Chair, yes, there's a huge gap here. I'm from July 23rd all the way to October 22nd. In fact, anything that shows up, anything that gets debuted on July 23rd and doesn't get reviewed again until October 22nd, could be considered killed by our own 60-day rules. And people will just forget what's going on. So I think that delay is not feasible. I also believe that there's not enough board meetings here. When I started on this board, we had 20 meetings, and we pretty much filled every meeting. And now we're down to, if we follow the schedule, 9 if you include the organizational meeting and 8 otherwise. So I think we need to have at least 11 meetings. Personally, I think we should stay at the current level, but at the very least, the town halls need to turn to regular meetings.
Sky?
I think the people who devised this schedule did it with a fine-tooth comb and probably talked about each meeting pros and cons. So it's been vetted. I would just like to say that I think it's either the chair or the president who can call a meeting. And I would assume that when they do call a meeting, it would be on a Thursday because we have some Thursdays set aside anyway. That's what some of the villages do. They cancel a regular meeting, but a week before, they can put it back on the schedule if there's enough business. Hope you understood that.
Any other discussions? Karen?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Sky, you were making the point about the 10-week break, but now you seem to be going back. So, Mr. Chair, is the gentlewoman from Hickory Ridge, what was the point that you were trying to make? Because I think you were trying to say that, you felt that that 10-week gap was too much.
Bill?
All right. Just two points. My first point was that if we would all recall, Mr. Chair, in prior years, the representative from River Hill and his co-chair, along with the interim president and CEO, removed 5 meetings from our meeting schedule, which was a 25% reduction that year. We all see the meeting schedules move around. That is my point, and that's what I want to speak to. Second point is with respect to the town halls, and I know that every single meeting on here, this is a skeleton schedule. These are kind of like the normal things that happen at these meetings at these times of the years. But in each of the town halls, the only thing that's mentioned is the budget. And given that the town hall on a recurring theme is a new feature of the CA board calendar, I would like, as we have our discussion, to add a second bullet point that says other topics as determined by the board and or staff. For instance, our last town hall meeting also featured some ideas about the splash pads and things like that. I know we want to make it free form, but if there's a second topic that needs to be addressed in a town hall format, I don't want us to be handcuffed through the scheduling process. Last quick point is I heard what my friend from River Hill said. We're going to have a discussion about the board operations manual, and I think that's a more appropriate place to discuss that than in the scheduling. The schedule should just be the schedule. If you want to talk about whether a town hall meeting is a meeting or if it's a non-meeting meeting, we can talk about that as we discuss the board operations manual later this evening. Thanks.
Anyone else want to, Sky, second turn? Wait, hold on. Delilah or Reg, do you want your first turn before Sky goes with her second?
No.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Delilah, go ahead, Sky.
I first talked about the gap between the meetings, and it's not a gap, it's a gap in quotation marks, because the gap can disappear if a regular meeting is called between those two scheduled meetings. So I'm just saying that we all should kind of set aside every Thursday for a regular meeting or one that needs to be called, say, a week ahead or something like that.
Eric, second time?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think having a plan where we just have a light schedule and then call meetings sort of randomly as we need them is kind of unfair to the board members. I understand what my friend from Hickory Ridge is saying, but I mean, people make plans. This is a volunteer board. I mean, people make plans for vacations. People have other plans, and we plan our schedules around when these board meetings occur. So I think it's important to set the schedule ahead of time with the expectation that unless there's a extenuating circumstance, which I don't believe we've ever actually added an additional regular meeting, that we basically set the schedule with sort of the maximum number of meetings we want to have. Again, if there's a meeting that we don't need to have, yes, it can be deleted from the schedule. But for the most part, I think I don't think we want to shortchange ourselves and shortchange the community by reducing the number of meetings down to effectively 8 meetings where actual business can be conducted. Therefore, I think it's important that we make the town halls regular meetings. This doesn't mean we have no town halls. We can still have town halls. You can have town halls in addition to these. But we should have a meeting at least every month with the exception of August, a regular meeting.
Anyone else on Eric's amendment? I'll just say I think the town halls are really important, and I think that there's enough meetings on here to keep the town halls as is. All All right, hearing no other discussion, I'm going to call the question on Eric's amendment. So this is a non-binding amendment to change what we'll review next week, to switch those town halls to regular meetings. Everyone understand? So vote yes will remove the town halls and replace them with regular meetings. A vote no will keep it as it is.
Porter, I don't think that's what the motion was for. I think it was to still hold the town halls. Was I incorrect? Still hold the town hall, but hold it as if it's a regular meeting.
No.
No, the motion was to make the town halls regular meetings. If we want to add town halls, we can. But turn the September 24th event into a regular meeting,
Okay.
and also turn the January 28th event into a regular meeting.
So again, I'm calling the question on the motion that Eric made, which is to change those two town halls to regular meetings. A vote yes will support Eric's amendment and remove the town halls or replace them. A vote no will maintain it as staff presented. Does everyone understand? Bill?
No.
Delilah?
No.
Eric?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Sky?
No.
And I vote no, amendment fails. So going back to the overall schedule, I'm going to let other people hop in for their first time if anyone wants to. So Bill, Delilah, Reg, anyone want to hop in for their first time on the schedule? Go ahead, Bill.
I kind of just bled into my response to the original motion with all of my input, so just put that in the place here. Thanks.
Got it. All right, Eric?
So given that we have a very compressed schedule planned, I think it's really important that we look at the votes and making sure that the votes are what we want to actually have. The first one that pops out at me is the budget schedule. I don't think we need to vote on the budget schedule. The schedule's literally right in this document. I mean, you can read the schedule right off this document.
Yeah, but we didn't follow it.
So I moved that we strike the vote on the budget schedule from this schedule. Do I have a second?
Okay, hearing no,
Sorry, second. I was thinking what I was going to talk about.
okay, any discussion?
Yeah, I have concerns, like, I would like to know, like, I think that's a great motion, that's why I seconded it. I'll vote to do that, but one of my concerns is that we changed the budget schedule without any notification. Like, if you look at what the actual schedule is, tonight is the night that we should have actually been voting on the final budget. We actually voted 2 weeks in advance, and I got multiple calls from residents who didn't, because they were looking at the schedule that we published on our website, that published in the documents that we get for the budget, that the schedules showed tonight as the night that we were going to actually be voting. And even my village board was a little upset about that. So I'm okay, but can we at least stick to the schedule that we publish? That would be my one concern.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to jump in really quick. It looks like we may have an IT problem here, and I just want to make sure my friend from Oakland Mills is heard.
Your
Yeah.
friend from Oakland Mills is right here.
But you may not
You're
be
not
getting
on
recorded.
reach.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Let's take a look at it. We're gonna pause because we don't have quorum right now.
I was going to mention that.
Just trying to help you out, Karen.
That's fine.
We can hear you guys. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear
We
you.
can hear you.
I can hear you guys.
Okay, then we're gonna keep going. Okay, thanks, Bill.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
We can't see them. So if they're raising their hands, we can't see any actions online. And I think
That's not a point of order, Eric, and I'm
It
not
is-
worried. That's not a point of order under Robert's rules. You are overruled. I can handle it. Reg and Delilah, we're not gonna be able to see you if you raise your hand, so if you wanna jump in the queue,
Like you thought.
just make your voice heard.
Roger that.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. Returning to the vote on, the amendments to remove a vote on a budget schedule. Anyone else want to discuss anything?
They need 10 minutes for us to take a break for 10 minutes so they can fix this.
Okay.
move to recess for 10 minutes.
We're gonna recess.
But you said we're following Robert's rule.
There we go.
I am, and the chair can call a recess.
You don't follow the rules, Michael. You pick
All
and
right.
choose.
All right, that's great, Karen.
We're giving them the leads. Yeah. Okay.
Test, check, check.
Occasionally, yeah. So next thing is the little treadmill. Oh, yeah, the walking pad. Oh, does he use it a lot? I think so. That takes it to board meeting. That's what I was thinking. I don't know if I could, like, think into it.
You get caught up and you're like,
Right. I'd have a lot more typos, I think.
But I think it's a little distracting being on the other end when people
When
are.
someone's walking, yeah.
Reg is online, isn't he?
Hold still for a minute.
Do you know if he's out of
Yeah.
town?
I'm having trouble concentrating. Maybe you can put a timer on your desk to rise.
Yeah, exactly, on your phone.
Make an app, that's a whole new idea right there. Right here. The app.
control the desk you're at, yeah. I think we have a partnership right here. Let's get this whole
Do
market.
a little LLC right now. and
Yeah, great.
do a little mobile app for integration. You need to be particularly cautious of cyber attack. Desk gets hacked.
Oh yeah, it starts going on its own. It's important to know the risks. I know. Sometimes I just don't think about it. You know, I'm just like, just chugging away.
That way, just really make it.
Just even like a 5-minute walk. It really helps people, like, just get you back,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think what I didn't realize is that we should all know how to. Once the ice stopped falling, that was.
Want to hear a funny story about that?
Yeah.
That's recently, our team was on a call with our county public school system. We're kind of assessment where Castle Volleyball was part of reprimanding school system, reminding them that if I got in front of their school, their responsibility.
Yeah, but you really, you couldn't just shelter to the regular social.
Still not. Well, it's almost like
Hey, Delilah and Reg, can you confirm that you can hear us, please?
I can hear you.
Thanks, Reg.
Yep, all good.
We're going to get started again. The only thing that I think is not working is these TVs. I can see the screen and I can see Reg and Delilah if they raise their hand here. So we're going to press on. Just as a reminder of where we were, Eric has made a motion to remove a vote from the schedule on the budget schedule because the schedule is already built into this anyways. So that's where we are at. Anyone want to jump into the queue now? I will jump in and say I agree with Eric that this is unnecessary and we can go ahead and remove this. Anyone else want to jump in? Okay, so we're going to now have a vote on whether to remove the vote on the budget from the schedule. Bill?
No.
Delilah?
I think.
No.
There they are.
Eric?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Sky?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Amendment passes. All right, now we're back to the governing documents. Eric, you've already spoken twice on this.
I want another amendment.
Oh, we've already spoken twice. We're going to let other people hop in.
Okay.
Anyone else have anything on the overall schedule? Okay, I'm going to hop in and say that I think there are a few other things that we should be streamlining on it. I'll get you next, Bill. I think there's a few other things that we should be streamlining on it. I don't really think it's necessary. There's a couple minor things, right? I don't think it's necessary to have the MBE report and the IRS 990 on there. That's either stuff that the audit committee can handle. It's not stuff that we have to do. And I think there's probably something like, I think we need to look at the role of the board operating committee. That I don't think the board operations committee serves much of a purpose. That there's much better, much more dynamic and flexible ways to set agendas. For example, if you were at the board operating committee this past week, it lasted 6 minutes because because the agendas were fine, and there's no point in having that rotating committee. So I think that's something we should look at. But the biggest thing is that I think it's really weird that we have both organizational goals, right, like the annual objectives that we want to focus on, and then separately we have budget objectives or budget goals. Like, those should not be different conversations. Those should be one and the same thing. And not only should they not be different conversations, they aren't. We end up relitigating the same things at both of those
Mr. Chair, are you making a motion?
conversations. I'm sorry, Eric? What?
Are you making a motion? It sounds
Eric,
like it.
no, I am not. We're not even voting tonight. This is just a discussion. Does anyone else want to hop in?
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, just wanted to, it occurred to me that I know that this is kind of all our standard boilerplate topics here, but given that this year is the semi-quincentennial birthday, should that be somewhere in our schedule? Should we find somewhere in our schedule to celebrate the country's 250th?
Sure.
The items that are in the schedule are not the agenda items. These are items that are either governing documents or historically that CA has done. So these will not be the final agendas. These are just items that we've identified. So the agendas will change, they'll be modified once the schedule is approved.
Karen?
I'm really confused, Michael, about what you were just saying to us a minute ago, because you seem to go off on a tangent about Board Operations Committee, budget votes and things like that, and instead of talking specifically about the schedule. I thought we were just talking about the schedule tonight, and so I'm not sure what the heck you were talking about and what that has to do with the schedule that we're voting on.
Okay. Delilah or Reg, you haven't spoken yet?
I'm good.
Reg?
Yeah, I'm good for right now.
Sky?
Yeah, I think that we're just getting too much down in the weeds if we talk about each of these bullet points tonight.
Okay. Karen, the items I was referring to are listed on the schedule. That's why I was bringing them up.
But I thought we were just talking literally just about the schedule and not about,
Hold on, Karen, you haven't been recognized.
you said my name, Michael,
Eric,
for the love
you want
of
to?
Pete.
Karen and Eric, both of you have been out of order multiple times tonight, all right? Please refrain from speaking when you haven't been recognized. Thank you. Okay, Eric, do you want to make another motion?
So it sounded like you're trying to combine the organizational goals.
Eric, please make a motion if you have a motion. It's
Okay,
not an opportunity to speak.
I'll move to combine the organizational goals and the budget goals. Do you want to second that, Mr. Chair?
I'm going to let someone else second if they want to.
I'll second it.
Okay? Any discussion? Go ahead, Eric.
I'm kind of confused why we have budget goals, because it doesn't seem like we follow them. Like, so in our last budget, all of a sudden we have converting pools into splash pads. I don't recall seeing that anywhere in our budget goals for the year, and yet it shows up in our budget. So what's the point of setting budget goals if something else shows up in our budget that we didn't even discuss? So again, like you, I'm confused why we have goals if we're not going to follow them. Because we never discussed turning pools into splash pads, and yet they're in the budget. Why?
Anyone else on the motion to, Bill, are you coming off mute? You want to talk?
Yeah, sure, I'll jump in. Thank you for recognizing me. I'm not certain where budget goals and organizational goals ties into scheduling. I think if we're going to talk about the schedule, we should talk about the schedule, talk about dates, talk about number of meetings. Merging goals is a worthy topic, and thank you, Eric, for kicking that off. But it's not the right time or place. We're supposed to be talking about the schedule. Thanks.
Anyone else want to take their first turn before Eric has a second? Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, I'll talk about budget goals. I think budget goals is a great idea. Honestly, I think that the goals that we set for the organization are much more, the budget goals should be the goals that we have. To make CA more affordable, those types of things, those should actually be the goals that we are setting. And the other things should just come up as parts of, this is how we're gonna do it, and bring those to the board as to how they're gonna achieve these things. But I think budget goals should be our only goals.
We need a motion to extend our time on this if we want to keep talking, otherwise I'll call the questions.
Motion to extend,
I second it.
By how long?
15.
I second it.
Any objections? Okay. Anyone else on the amendment to combine these things? Sky?
I think budget goals are a subset of organizational goals. That's all.
Okay. Eric, your second time?
So I understand what my colleague from Wild Lake says, that we should be focusing on the schedule, but in order to build a schedule, you need to actually know what the meat of the schedule is going to be, what we're going to be voting on, what we're going to be discussing. I mean, if we're only discussing one thing, you only need one meeting. If we're discussing 10 things, you need 10 meetings, roughly. So you need, you can't really look at the schedule without the context of the business that needs to be done. So yeah, I agree with you that we need to be looking at the schedule, but it needs to be in the context of how much business we need to conduct. So I think it's important to be looking at these bullet points. And by the way, I thank the president for putting these bullet points and matching that each bullet point to a meeting, matching the meetings up to bullet points. It sort of gives us a good plan of attack going forward into the next year. But then again, the execution is key here. So I think when we take a vote and when we discuss priorities, those priorities should have meaning. When we take a vote on budget priorities, those should have meaning. We shouldn't discuss these priorities here and then all of a sudden this other priority just shows up in our budget. That's not appropriate in my opinion. So again, I think having this discussion is important. I think it's good to discuss organizational goals for the current year and budget goals for the next year. That's why they're separated. But it's also important to make sure that when we set goals that we're achieving them, that we're working towards them, and that we just don't say, okay, we have goals and we ignore them. We have goals and we follow them. We don't. So we set these priorities, and those priorities should be in the budget, and we should be able to see in the budget where those priorities appear. And there shouldn't be so when we get the budget, there should be no surprises. So this year, there's a surprise. The splash pads were definitely a surprise for the community.
Eric, you got 10 seconds.
And so this is important to ensure that we have no surprises, so we should keep them separate, in my opinion. But we need to follow them. That's the key thing. This organization needs to follow the priorities the board sets.
Okay. Eric, does that mean you want to withdraw your motion?
No, I'll just vote against it.
Okay, so Eric's motion was to combine the budget goals and the organizational goals. A vote yes will do that. A vote no will not do that, and we could be voting again on this next week or next month. Bill.
I'm voting no because I don't think just bringing up and talking about this topic for 10 minutes is sufficient to actually address the problem or the topic. If we could have a better, more thoughtful discussion on it, I think I'd have a different vote, but it is no for tonight.
Just so everyone, before we move on, just so everyone knows, this isn't actually changing any policies. This is just changing what we're going to discuss next week or next month.
Point of
Delilah.
No.
Eric?
No.
Karen?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Sky?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. All right, motion passes. Karen and Eric, please.
Mike, you put a smile on our faces.
All right, we're going to, anything else on the schedule? Eric, you've already had your two turns.
Okay, for another amendment?
Does anyone else have anything? Go ahead, Eric.
So I moved that the vote on the grants distribution be an actual roll call vote on the grants distribution.
No, that's not scheduled, Eric. That's not scheduled.
It's a bullet point. It says vote
No.
grants distribution.
That is not going to affect the schedule one way or another.
It's a bullet point on the schedule.
You're off topic. Anyone else on this topic?
What?
All right.
Okay.
Hearing nothing else.
Okay, I'll vote to remove it.
We are going to move on to
Mr.
no,
Chair,
Eric.
I'll move to remove it.
We're going to move on to new business now. All right. So new business is the Lakefront Capital Projects.
Yes, this was moved from the last meeting. It was on the agenda, but voted to move to tonight. And Jeremy is here to give an update to the board just on the number of capital projects done around the Lake K kit.
Excellent. Do you want me to send a PDF, Ormsby? How do you want to?
On a side note, credit to our IT staff for pivoting during an equipment breakdown and making the meeting happen almost seamlessly, so that's great.
Okay, excellent.
Can the people in line see these slides?
Let's see.
Yes, I can see the slides. I just can't hear Hornsby speaking though.
But Jeremy doesn't have his mic on.
Or Jeremy, okay.
All right. Sorry, I got a lot going on. Thank you, Ormsby and team, for making this happen. Yeah, so we just wanted to give an update to all the activity that's been happening at the lakefront at Lake Kittamakunde over the last 5 or 6 months. So just a quick run through the projects we're going to talk about in terms of all the activities that are down there. This is actually one of my favorite sort of satellite views of the community whenever I'm in either a GIS map or the county interactive map. You don't get this intention from the architect who designed the lakefront unless you're looking down from above in terms of just that geometric perspective. So some projects, obviously lake dredging was happening for the last 3 months. Had some significant impacts in terms of lake usability. The pathway had to be closed to facilitate that. Lakefront stage is under construction, some other improvements, including the railings and some smaller projects. And I was going to touch on some other projects that are not specifically CA projects, but are there at the lakefront and are relevant and important to sort of the status of the lake itself. So lake dredging. So this is sort of a significant, infrastructure management project for how we take care of probably our largest, one of our largest water bodies. Our watershed management plan includes dredging scheduling, which means we dredge our lakes every 6 or 7 years as a rule, kind of all working our way through the 3 major lakes. So we removed about 21,000 cubic yards of sediment during that project over the 3 months that was active. About 2,100 dump truck loads were pulled out of the lake. This restores lake depth because over time the lakes, they're essentially sediment ponds. They fill up with sediment over time. Little Patuxent River overflows its banks, gets into the lake, deposits sediment, and it impacts its quality. So that project is complete. It ran through from November through January. And then these are just some photos of the work that was underway in the fall. We got really fortunate. The weather was fantastic. If everybody remembers, in November and December, the crew was able to crank at really high levels, pulling sediment out, probably 700 cubic yards a day were coming out at some points. We got very fortunate. Moving on to the lakefront stage, kind of the other major project underway down there. So, Lakefront Live has been active. We've been having concerts and community events down there ever since the community was founded, essentially. And historically, there's been temporary tents and canopies, brought down to the lakefront to facilitate that, to host those concerts. And for a long time, we really wanted something permanent, something commensurate to the quality of service we want to provide to our residents. So this will be a performance venue that's permanent, that has really enhanced lighting and sound. We were really fortunate to receive about $750,000 in funding through a legislative bond initiative, so we can really credit our county delegation in Annapolis for helping to make this happen. Guy Gazzoni, Courtney Watson, numerous delegates at the state level helped pull this off for us to make it possible. Again, it's a significant enhancement to Lakefront Live programming. Other community events, it also enables year-round support of events. So normally that tent would have to come down in the fall and it goes back up in May, but during that time, we really couldn't host anything at the lakefront as a result. Overall cost is about $1 million to build this facility. It's currently under construction, started in November. It's about 50% complete. The steel structure is underway now. We were really fortunate in timing with some weather. We were able to pour the foundation, and the bulk of the concrete work was done before that major cold snap came. We would have been in significant trouble if we had to delay while that cold snap happened to get that concrete poured. The steel is underway. I was actually out there this afternoon. It's really starting to take shape. The crossbars are in place. They're expected to have the bulk of the steel work craned and in place this week. So it's going to start to really visually capture what that structure is going to be now, which really looks fantastic. And then just a couple photos of it. This is some concrete. It looks different right now. Again, I was out there today. Some of the steel structure is up. And then there's a rendering of it from a finished products perspective. So we're really excited to have this as a venue to support the community for numerous purposes. Lakefront railings, again, just is sort of continuing to improve the infrastructure at the lakefront. This is providing improved safety and functionality. The old railings, we had an incident in the fall where a jogger was stretching and used the existing old railings to stretch and actually pulled a whole section of railing off at the time. Fortunately, they were pulling in and not going out, so they sort of came in towards the brick. It's an enhanced railing aesthetic. The old railings were too wide, the gaps in the bars, so that it didn't meet current safety standards. These new railings do meet those safety standards. We're expecting it to be complete in March. It's about 75% of the way in there now. And here's some photos of it. You can sort of see in the upper left-hand photo, in the background is the older railing design, and you can see how much wider it is in between the metal tines, where children could actually fit through that gap, and the new ones meet the new safety standards. This is actually phase 2 of the railing replacement project, so at this point, all the railings at the lakefront will be this new design. The people tree, sort of an iconic component of this community. You sort of see it everywhere. We're working to restore it to its original condition and protect it from deterioration. The figures at the top of the people tree are actually made out of fiberglass. And so if they don't have some type of protective coating on them, they wear, the elements, UV exposure deteriorates them over time. That has not yet started. That's something we're going to knock out in March. So in general with the lakefront, we have, I think Bill mentioned the 250th celebration. So this 4th of July is going to be a significant elevation in programming, both at the county level and at the CA level, to recognize that. So one of the things we're doing as staff is making sure the lakefront is going to look as good as it possibly can to host that higher level of community exposure for the 4th of July coming up this summer. So we're really excited to have the lakefront looking its best this summer as much as we can. And these are just some photos of the people tree right there. So that, again, that painting will happen this spring. It's not gold leaf, just paint, kept it light. Other ancillary projects, thanks, Karen. Again, in the spirit of making sure the lakefront as a whole is up to snuff to host the events, there's lots of features down there that we want to make sure are looking the best. So we're going to be painting the light poles to match. There's a new slate gray color. That's the new standard down there for continuity across the lakefront. As you may remember, I can go advance. The current poles are like an old teal, sort of a historic teal. And at this point, these light fixtures, they don't make them anymore. We're starting to scavenge projects, pieces of them to be able to restore them, but they are iconic. And so we're going to restore them and repaint them to continue their lifespan. And then the pavers, we've had some settling over time at the lakefront. And so this spring, in addition to the painting of the light poles, we're going to be pulling some of those old pavers out and resetting them to make that walkway area as level as possible. So moving on to some of the other improvement projects that are taking place at the lakefront that are not CA. So the Veterans Monument, that's currently underway. That's a project that's being sort of led by the Howard County Veterans Foundation. It's specifically dedicated to recognize Howard County veterans and their families. Calvin Ball came through and the county council came through with a really big grant last year. I think it was $1 million to get them over the hump. This board, CA, also provided funding a couple years ago to help support this initiative. Our team in Open Space is helping providing in-kind support to that project in general because it's adjacent to our property. So we're all kind of working hand in hand to facilitate that improvement. It's about 70% complete. And then here's some renderings of it. So this is a photo of a component of the marble sort of water feature that's there. And then also a rendering of what the finished product is going to look like. That center piece with the water fountain and the star is there. It's currently under wraps for protection from the weather. The perimeter stone seating is not there yet. They're looking to do a dedication ceremony sometime in mid-May. So sort of look forward to that, and you should absolutely be there if possible. And then utilities repair. This isn't a very glitzy project, but it was something that had to take place. So our team collaborated with Howard County Department of Public Works. There's a significant sewer infrastructure component for the community that runs on that far side of the lake in between Lake Kit and the river. They were having some flow issues. There was a choke point that was resulting in some unintended discharges happening in that space. So to prevent that, to protect the ecosystem there, they actually replaced the sewer line that transects the river with a larger diameter pipe. That's all done right now. It's complete. We actually were able to coordinate the dredging project with the county sewer project at the same time so that they originally were going to have to access the site from 29 and work their way through the forest. But because we coordinate with Public Works between our CIP program and their program, looking for synergies to efficiently serve the community, we were able to use the same access road, the same south entrance road at the same time. So their trucks were using the same space as our dredging trucks at the same time. So it really provided an efficiency, sort of stacking in time and space of projects to serve the community. And then, so those are quick project highlights for Lake Kit. And then, some closing notes on these projects. As I mentioned, project duration. Am I good to go? Still good?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
All right. So I'll make sure people are hearing me and stuff like that. I got important stuff to talk about. So project duration. So when we talk about a project lasting 3 months, that's not really indicative of the time commitment to make that happen. So the 3-month dredging project actually had about 2 years of planning to make that happen between analysis, engineering, consultants, survey work, and then there's going to be months of post-construction work to close that project out. So I just want to make sure kind of the board has a sense of the amount of time investment from staff and other resources to make these projects happen. It's more than just that 3-month period of performance. They're in some cases years, especially the stage project, for example. That was years of lobbying and negotiations and design to pull that off, both at the state level, and the actual constructability level and permitting. There's lots of work that goes into these projects to make that happen on the front end. And then the other piece of this too is it's a team effort. Lots of staff across this organization work really hard to make all these projects happen, from the general counsel's office to help us resolve access with the State Highways Administration to do the dredging, to finance, accounting. All these projects require a large team of CA staff to pull off that touch them in certain ways to make them happen. Procurement, we had to procure all this stuff to do it, right? So there's a team of staff, well beyond me, that make this happen. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear about that. And then the story map. So, we're really advancing our GIS resources in the community to help convey information. And I'm really excited about how this work is coming. I just want to note, there's a really great resource that's available to help provide additional information about these projects at the lakefront that's available on our GIS resources page. So if you hit CA projects link on the GIS resources page, you can get a whole story map that has more details about these projects, that actually has some design documents in there as well. So just wanted to highlight that as a resource for the board if they want more information after this presentation. So, and that's all I got.
Okay, anybody have questions for Jeremy? Eric?
Yeah, could you go into a little bit more detail about the lakefront plaza electrical lighting upgrades? And the reason why I ask is because we had this current fiscal year, we allocated $200,000 for the electrical lighting upgrades. And then for next year, we allocated an additional $100,000 for phase 2. So the questions I have are, how is this different from the bandshell lighting? And what's the difference between phase 1 and phase 2? And lastly, is there going to be a phase 3, 4, and 5? So what's the full scope of this project?
So the lighting repair projects are operating in nature. So these particular projects, for the most part, are all operating. So they're not funded by the capital projects that you referenced.
So can you discuss the capital projects then?
Yeah, so the capital projects, so in addition to the $750,000 we had from the state for the core construction of the stage, the lakefront stage is the new sort of name. There are components of the project that the state didn't fund that we needed to fund through supplemental capital projects that CA was contributing to. So there are lighting aspects. I mentioned the lighting upgrade, the sound upgrade, other infrastructure associated with the stage to make it happen that those capital dollars were supporting.
Okay, anyone else want to, Karen?
Yeah, I'm going to try to ask all my questions at once, Jeremy, so hang tight, take notes.
Okay.
So on the people tree, I want to know those fiberglass people. The people tree is beloved. Nobody wants to get rid of the people tree, but at what point can we no longer protect that from the weather? And do we need to put a glass cover on it or something? So that's one thing. And then thank you for all the work on the Veterans Memorial. I appreciate that. And then on the sewer utilities, I've been getting the alerts. We had a water main break next to my house, and I want to know how this is impacting CA. What I've noticed here in Howard County is we're having about 3 water main breaks a day during all the cold weather that we've been having. And so I want to know, is that been an issue for us? Because I know there are pieces of the sewer that we're responsible for. So that's that. Project duration. I love preparation. I think that is totally fine with me. I remember talking about this company in India had to move a ton of people from one office to another, and one of their requirements was you cannot disrupt business. They spent 2 years planning for it and moved everybody in 2 weeks. So, and it went smoothly because of all the preparation. So I am a fan of that. I think it makes the actual performance a lot cheaper. So do your prep work, 100%. Thank you. And then on the GIS stuff, yeah, I love that. I love the GIS and that you guys are putting all that information out and that's the kind of stuff I want the residents to be able to find very easily. So thank you for that. And that's all I've got. So if you want to talk about the people tree and then the sewers, the water main breaks.
So before you respond, Jeremy, I want to just note that at 8:11, Ashley joined. So if that can get noted in the minutes. And then does someone want to make a motion to add more time?
I'll move to extend 15.
Any objections to extending 15? All right, thanks, Eric. All right, Jeremy.
Okay, I got my list. I wrote it down. That's a great question about the people tree. I think once we get through this restoration this spring, we can absolutely start looking at other ways to protect or enhance it. It's such a fixture there at the lakefront. We probably can't move it, right? So I think we'd have to look at some other ways, but that's something we can consider, again, once we get past this near-term restoration of it. What do we do in 5 years when it needs it again or something
Right, if it's deteriorating, I'd like to start telling people, hey, we're keeping it up. But if it's fiberglass, what is the life of that? And you can only paint it so many times, right?
Agreed.
And at what point should we commission an artist to maybe come in and make a more durable?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, noted. On the sewer issue, and this actually sort of is a nice touch point for later in this board meeting. So the infrastructure in the community is 50, 60, 70 years old. It's at the end of its life. It's failing. There's a water main break every month in my neighborhood in Harper's Choice. And so it's something that the county is actively working on repairing. I think the scale of the problem is tremendous because it's community-wide, and resource constraints are very real, and this stuff is all very expensive. So, you know, it's a county-level problem. On the water main side, they're very much aware of it. I think they're actually we're having meetings with the county on this on a regular basis. I think they're actually deploying some AI resources to help do predictive modeling of where these things are going to fail in advance, and then help them prioritize which ones get replaced first, which is actually kind of neat. You know, this is a sanitary sewer project that I talked about at Lake Kit, so it's different than the water mains. But that's noted. It's an infrastructure issue in the whole community that the county's working on.
But is it?
Karen, we're going to let other people go first before you get your second time.
I'm just asking you to answer my question, Michael.
Does anyone else want to go before Eric or Karen have their second time?
Yes.
Go ahead, Reg.
Okay. Hey, Jeremy, I've got a question regarding the silt or the sledge that you guys are pulling, or that they're pulling out of the lake. I'm asking this because I don't really know, but where does it go? After they load them in those trucks, how do they get rid of it? Where's it go?
That's a great question, Reg. So we are fortunate that a decade ago or more, we established the Murray Hill placement site in the village of Kings Contrivance specifically for this purpose. So we have been able to realize some significant cost savings because we don't have to haul it to some other county for deposition. So it actually goes to Murray Hill in Kings Contrivance, and that's where it's all been placed. You know, we're starting to look at what our next placement site is going to be because we're approaching capacity of that particular asset for us. But that's where it goes. That's where all 21,000 cubic yards of sediment went, is Murray Hill and Kings Contrivance.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering.
Bill?
Just a quick question. Did you put a GIS transponder on the barge that you moved around the lake so we could see the progress, or?
I am sure the consultant, the dredging itself was driven by a GIS, a GPS system was controlling where that dredging was happening. So I'm sure they have it. We could probably ask for it.
I was saying, did it get integrated into our system? That would be an
Oh,
interesting
yeah,
kind
the
of feature.
GPS, that'd be an interesting layer, right? Where did the barge go in the lake? And
Yeah.
yes, indeed.
Sky?
Yeah, the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee is starting to look into light pollution. And I was wondering if you had considered that or are considering it in the future for evening events down by the lakefront.
That's a great question, Sky. Not specifically for the lakefront. We've relamped a lot of the fixtures at the lakefront. Because there is a lot of grade changes and it's heavily used by the community at night, we want to make sure it's well lit. And so at the moment, the light trespass that occurs with those older fixtures is something we're not able to immediately address, but it's something we're considering. Light pollution is something that we've made really great strides in throughout the community. Pretty much all the fixtures we've installed outside are full cutoff. So all of our parking lots, for example, are full cutoff. So I have photos actually pre and post of the Supreme Sports Club parking lot when I renovated it about a decade ago, where there was a yellow light cloud around that facility that doesn't exist anymore since we retrofit the facility. But that's a great question. It's something we'd like to talk about for the lakefront.
Ashley or Delilah, do you want to hop in here before we give people second turns? Okay. I have a quick question myself on the pavers. This is 90% rhetorical, but any of the pavers that have names on them are going right back down, even if they need to get resettled, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And we have a GIS resource to help you find a particular paver if you want. There's a grid pattern now, and it'll tell you which grid square it's in.
Great.
If you want it as a resource.
Great. Eric?
Yeah, so again, with the question, following up with my question on the capital projects with the electrical, so there's three capital projects. There's the bandshell electrical lighting. I assume that's to light the bandshell for $200K. There's the general plaza electrical lighting phase 1, which is $200K, and phase 2, which is $100K. Could you tell me what has been happening with those two projects? So what's the 200K upgrades for the electrical this year and lighting this year outside the band shell? And what you're planning to do next year with the 100K?
Well, so the 200K is augmenting the $750,000 to actually.
No, that's the 200K for the band shell, I got that.
Yes.
The other 200K for the lakefront electrical.
Right.
What's that doing?
So that's augmenting other components of lakefront infrastructure to support improvements there at the lakefront. Yeah.
And the 100K beyond that is just more upgrades?
Yes.
And is there going to be 100K?
No, because we're completing the stage. We're having a ribbon cutting in May.
So this is all for the stage?
Correct.
Okay, Karen, did you have a?
So the stage is actually more than just 250. It's 250 plus the 200 for these electrical upgrades, plus 100 for this year's electrical upgrade. So it's a lot more than, we're investing a lot more than 250 into the stage.
Correct. That's, yeah, so the total is $1 million or plus the 100,000 for this current fiscal year for ancillary improvements, yeah.
You had 750 that we got, plus 200 for the
Yes.
stage, plus 200 for the general lakefront, that's 400.
Yes.
Plus 100 for this year's electrical, that's
Correct.
500.
Right.
So that's 1.2.
Yes.
Karen, you want your second time?
Yes, so Jeremy, when you were talking about the sewers and what Howard County's doing, I want to make sure, do we need to have a seat at that table? And are you there? Because you know a lot about it, but are you actually in on the conversations in case CA is being impacted? That's what I'm most concerned about.
Yeah,
Our open space, our land.
Yes, we're very proactive in collaborating with the Department of Public Works on all their projects they have coming. There's lots of access agreements that we regularly engage in and maintain with them. So it's something we're in constant conversation with them about.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else want to go again? Okay, thanks, Jeremy. So Sean, now we're going to move on to the business capability model.
All right, thank you. So I'll give you some background on this before Armsby comes forward. As you start to see, and we'll start to present in the next few meetings, is, Columbia Association has grown quite a bit. We are a very large organization right now, approaching $100 million. Things get complex, things get complicated, and we always try to look at ways to be as efficient as possible to provide the best service, to provide the best value to our annual charge payers. So toward that end, Armsby and I worked with Rick Arthur from Hartman Executive Advisors. He's the Chief Information Officer and Chief Information Security Officer, and Hartman sort of serves as our CIO consultant. And speaking with Rick, Hartman had a business capability model they used for some of their clients based around IT that would really kind of lay out some of the items that Armsby is going to talk about tonight. And in our discussions about it, we thought it would be very productive to run this business capability model on the whole organization we have here at Columbia Association. And that means not looking at us as a hierarchical structure, but basically what are the functions we perform. So toward that end, Armsby and I put together an internal team of some very high quality employees we have here. They have done phenomenal work, and you're going to see that tonight. Led by Armsby, our VP of Administrative Services, and Rick, from Hartman Executive Advisors. We have Anish Manray, our Assistant Director of Community Programs and Services, Allison Slater, our Human Resources Manager, Hunter Kraus, our Senior Internal Auditor, and Josh Bennett, our Construction Management Project Manager for Community Operations. So with that, I'm excited to hand it over to Armsby to present to you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Just give me 1 second. Okay, all right. All right, good evening, Board Vice Chair, President, and Board members, and members of the public. My name is Armsby Carbon. I am the Vice President of Admin Services. With me, I've got Hunter Kraus, Josh Bennett, and our external consultant, Rick Arthur. So we'll be presenting on the business capability project. I actually do have some handouts I would like to pass out. Appreciate it. So while these get around the room, to lend a little bit more context to the framing that Sean gave, this initiative was something that we were very excited to pursue once it came across our table, because it was something that we we thought would help bring a lot of connectivity into all the different disconnected places and processes that are going on across the organization. And we thought this was a real good opportunity to unify around the work that we are doing as we think through the future of back office operations and just business process efficiencies throughout the organization as we look at things. So we went in with some purposeful goals, which really was to identify and define the business capabilities around Columbia Association. So taking a look at what are the real key things that make up CA in terms of how we deliver value and service to the community. Identify from an operational perspective if there were any redundancies, inefficiencies, and any sort of capabilities that we could optimize and really pursue for future enhancements, and really take shape around how do we leverage our internal resources to really deliver on these services that we do for the organization. So we put together our goals. We aligned everything to the strategic initiatives and the strategic plan of the organization. And we wanted to come up with a business model that really makes sense to really unify around, what we do within the organization. So with that, we aligned this initiative around resource resiliency, modernization, and risk management within our work. So we went in focused on those pieces. This was an initiative spearheaded by this cross-functional group. We took a look at internal capacity to really get this project done, but also with a focus around people across the organization who bring different perspectives that can really lend to the outcome of this work and what we do. We also knew that we couldn't do this alone, so we actually leaned in on our subject matter expertise who has developed these sorts of business capability models for other organizations, so we can really get that insight and that external view from this this framework development that we looked at. So we had really a cross-functional group from community programs and services. We had folks from HR, which is where Allison sits. Hunter is from audit and internal control, so she brought a very good process lens to our work, and Josh, who supports the community operations perspective. We also reached out to a lot of other departments and folks that we wanted to hear from to understand how their processes were being done at CA and actually how that rolls up in consideration of this. And of course, senior leadership was highly involved in this work. This is an initiative we kicked off really early July is where we sort of started to have that discovery framing conversation. But we kicked off the project officially, got it chartered in August, and worked through the month of December, which is when we actually delivered a final project report on this initiative. And of course, throughout that journey, there was a lot of checkpoints. So I'm gonna pass the mic over to Rick to share a little bit about what a business capability model is, because it may be a foreign framework to some, and then we'll sort of continue from there.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, and Sean and Armsby, thank you for your leadership and collaboration over the years. Business capability model, as you look at that chart, there's a lot. And when you think about what CA does as an organization, there's a lot of moving parts. And so that's the reason for the eye chart. So there's a lot of pieces there. But the key, as Sean said, this is really about how an organization functions. When you look at a typical hierarchy chart, a departmental chart, you hear the term silo. This really is an attempt to break those silos down and think in terms of function or process. Inputs, what happens, outputs that come out. And so when we went through this journey, it really was an opportunity to clarify those core functions of what the organization performs, the interdependencies, the different departmental aspects of what goes on. It's also a great opportunity to drive continuous improvement. Like many forefathers of process improvement, Deming as an example. You need to define what you want to improve. And so the capability model is really that model that defines, like a map, how the organization works and supports the mission of the organization. It also serves as an opportunity to strengthen our goals and objectives, because what we're looking to achieve are all derived through that capability and the improvements necessary to drive those outcomes. And then again, as we talked about with continuous improvement, it's about continuously and being able to sustain the improvements that we make, so that opportunity to control the changes that we're doing. So when you look at this model, there's really two major groupings of things that we think about. One that is called the defining capabilities, and these are the things that our people that we serve experience. It's the things that produce outcomes for our communities and for the beneficiaries of the organization. And then you have shared services, which are those things that enable those defining things to happen. So things like HR, or IT, or legal, all of those underlying shared services that an organization depends upon. All right, and so, is this where you want to keep going? This is where you take over? All right. I always follow Armsby's lead.
Thank you. So, like I said, we kicked off this journey in July with a lot of iterative work as part of this work group. We met on a pretty regular cadence and frequency, also provided a lot of updates. We held a few work sessions with senior leadership, but we did a lot to get as much input as we could, right, throughout the organization on what the organization does, right, until we could get to a final state framework. One thing we like to highlight in our journey is that when we first started taking a look at what are the key defining processes that CA engages with, we were able to really surface about 37 different things, right? And it just proved to be a lot of complexity in our discovery as we started unpacking this work. So we iterated through this, and the goal was to get to a place where we synthesize all this down to a really meaningful framework that makes sense for our organization. And we finally were able to do that through all the engagement that we did. And delivered the business capability model. And what you have in front of you is actually a visual representation of that work. There's a lot more underneath what it is, but we wanted to synthesize it down into a framework that we can hand to anyone once you know how to sort of read through it and get a sense of what CA is as an organization beyond its org chart, right? And what you're looking at, you would have some 9 defining areas. Those are what we think externally, how folks who interface with CA sort of, see CA from an outward perspective, and 13 shared services in the purple columns that enable how CA does work. And everything in the blue portions are really level 1 processes, and there's about 170 of them on your paperwork that sort of maps out some of the key top-level processes that CA engages to deliver the value that it does. So, again, you have the model framework in front of you. CA is a very complex organization. We're able to identify 9 defining areas, supported by 13 shared services that actually make the organization run. And these shared services execute hundreds, if not thousands, of processes to really enable the work that this organization does to support its 1,400 plus peak team members and its evolving capabilities. Karen, we talked about GIS, BI, AI, some of the themes that we are faced with in our reality, and this model really helps us understand how do we sort of play in those spaces, and we'll share some examples of what that looked like. So again, at the top, we've identified 9 defining areas. As part of our work, wasn't just to identify those areas, but actually to define what those are from an end-to-end process perspective, bring ownership to those areas, because that was pretty important for us, right? We know there's turnover in the organization. We wanted to make sure that each defining area, from environmental sustainability all the way through grant management in your top colors here, had an owner within the organization that has authority over those key processes. We made sure to strategically align those areas as we were going through that work, because we spent a lot of time as in the organization developing a strategic plan, so it made sense to make that alignment as we did that work, as well as to identify some of the primary and secondary focus areas that we thought made sense to tag on to this. We then sort of mapped out what the end-to-end process flows in these areas for each of the defining areas from a top-down perspective, and then from all the shared services, from IT, HR, finance, everything that we do within the organization to support service delivery at the top level, we did the same homework there. We made sure each of these areas had ownership, had strategic alignment, and defined what their sort of end-to-end process delivery looks like within the organization. And in this work, we actually stood up a business process registry, because we figure while we are at it, we might as well capture those processes, right? So this can help in many different ways. One of the key ways that we initially and immediately used this was with our ERP, financial ERP modernization project. We captured 167 business processes, defined, strategically aligned, mapped out in this work. So as we sort of move forward with that initiative, we have a space to capture that throughout the organization and build a true business process registry within our space. So just to sort of go through the 9 defining areas, this is not in order of any ranked priority. These are just numerical numbers to count these out. So we've got environmental sustainability, community connections, events and engagement, property and facility management, programs and service delivery, membership sales and relationship management, governance and compliance, civic engagement, village relationship management, and grant management. So those are the 9 defining areas that we were able to distill at a top level that represents, the key services of Columbia Association. Supporting these areas are 13 shared services. So any of these 9 areas can tap into any of these 13 shared services to really deliver value within their space. That can be anything from HR, IT, legal, guidance, volunteer management, marketing, communications, internal facility management, spatial planning and data management, and so forth. So these are really the key enablers of everything that we do, from the people to the tools, the technology, the legal guidance, the creativity, the people. We talked about the people tree earlier, the volunteer management that helps us achieve what we do within the organization. So for each of the 9 defining areas, I just wanted to sort of give an example so you understand what we put together. It's not necessarily all spelled out in the model framework, but using community connections, engagements, and events as an example, we defined what that defining process is for CA. And in the definition of community connections, engagements, and events, it talks about managing the process of envisioning, planning, promoting, and executing events and activities that foster belonging and culture vitality. This includes identifying community interest, designing engagements, coordinating logistics and partners, and gathering feedback for continuous improvement. So for each of these 9 defining areas, plus the 13 shared services, they are framed in more detail in this sort of process definition and its end-to-end capability of what that area really involves. And again, we aligned everything to the strategic plan and we started to capture in blue all the sub-processes, level 1 sub-processes that we think make this work happen for the organization. So how will we use this? And we've brought some examples, right? Because again, this looks like a lot, but we want to make sure it's something that is useful for us. So we talked about the ERP project. We have an initiative sponsored by Sean McCollum, the CFO, to really look at our financial ERP for modernization. And as we look at, and sorry for the public and board members, an ERP is an enterprise resource planning stack. So it pretty much is all the applications that make our financial systems run, right? But an ERP can also include your HR system, your CRM. So think of, our GL, our AP functionality, all those things that even payroll, that sort of flow through our financial management stack. So we're looking to modernize that as an initiative. And one of the things that we can use this business model for is to take a look at all the areas where the financial system might impact, right? This project might have an impact on the business. So we can look at all the defining areas and their sub-processes as an example. And this is not to highlight where everything falls, but really just to give us a sort of crosswalk to say, hey, we're doing this project. Let's take a look at our business capability model, and let's take a look across each defining area and its sub-processes and see how this project can have an impact in those space. By just starting that conversation with that level of identification, we can absolutely tell who do we go to, because now we know who owns this process area for CA. And we can start to have those conversations and bring in these individuals, again, to break down the silos and start to have engagement from across the RACI spectrum, right? Who's responsible for these processes, who needs to be accountable, so that we can have a very successful project output from any projectized initiative. So that's one use case where we found this helpful just almost immediately. A secondary use case is taking a look at the business process model and trying to identify what are the processes that are ripe for things like AI optimization, right? So we do a lot of work, as an example, in HR around learning and professional development. I don't know if you guys have heard, but there is AI video creation technology that could perhaps create a course and have that delivered pretty quickly within our space. Jeremy talked about within Department of Public Works, how they're using AI to sort of model out some of the work that they're doing. Of course, AI is very helpful for reporting and analytics. So really the model can give us an immediate identification and roadmap to target, areas where we can look for optimization and things like how do we leverage AI technology within the organization. So these are just two really high-level use cases, and we found several more since we've been doing this work. But it's just a really useful tool, and as part of its intent, wanted to share what that looks like. Some additional cases, we wanted to build this, as Rick said, to sort of shift away from where in the hierarchy you fall, more towards what team are you on? What processes do you own, right? So we could start to have conversations across the organization and break down silos to be more effective in the work that we do. So this is another benefit of using the model. It helps support our organizational risk management because it really helps us identify cross-functionally across the organization how processes interact and how we can mitigate risk in that space. I think I mentioned already that it helps us build a business process directory. That alone, just from a turnover perspective, if you have that in place, someone comes in, guess what? They have a starting point around what processes they own and all the sort of steps and SOPs and supporting documents around that. So there are a lot more use cases that we've identified, and what you see here are just a few that really, come to the top of mind that we wanted to highlight for the board. of course, this work was done cross-functionally, and one of the things that we asked heading into home stretch last December was what energized us about this project, right? Because this felt transformational in terms of how we typically look at the organization from a hierarchical view to more so of process ownership and cross-functional team dynamics. And we had some really, really good reflections from the team. And maybe if I can invite Josh and Hunter to share any feedback, that will be helpful. I'll start with you, Hunter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Armsby obviously hit a lot of it on the head, but I think the key things that stuck out to me were how do we make our processes more efficient across the board? Because essentially the more efficient we are internally, the more efficiently we can serve our community. So it's not just like an internal document that we're just going to use and it doesn't affect our mission or our strategy here at CA. One flows right into the other. So I just thought it was really interesting. And then also just the idea of seeing CA as an entire team as opposed to, oh, I'm in the audit department or I'm in community operations. Like I, as part of the audit department, support all of these different areas. And so I have connections across CA. So it creates more of that fluid and dynamic employee environment and community as well. So for me, those were the things that stuck out to me the most, just on top of all of the other use cases that Armsby already noted.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that was most exciting about this was just as I have the, on here, it says when you really spell it out and put on paper everything that we do, it's really impressive. Like it's a lot. And I've been at CA for coming up on 10 years now. And I think it's taken me this long to realize how much we do and how much impact we have on the community. I interact with a lot of outside contractors as we're out looking at projects, and they're always saying, so you like manage this one building here, or you do this one aspect, and they when I get to share with them the breadth of what we do here, everybody walks away impressed. And I think with being one of our guiding principles or one of our strategic goals of getting sort of our brand awareness out there and identity out there, there's people in the community that still need to know what we do and what areas we touch. And now, when we put it out on paper, when you can have, like myself as an example, it took me a long time to realize all these different things we do. And when we have new team members, when we have team members that maybe just work, they come in on summer lifeguards, or you have that work at a gym or work in school-age services, they might not know everything that we do. But when we start to plug them into a team and we can show them, you're a part of something big, we can speak about it more intelligently. We can share that. We can know what's going on. We can answer our members and our community members when they ask questions that might not be in our area. Or we have better resources that we can then point them in the right direction. And so another thing that I think is neat that, Armsby kind of hit on when we're kind of looking at new projects, new initiatives, you can sort of see, you can kind of overlay it with the model and see it touches all these different areas, which might mean it's going to take a lot of effort to get that up and running. It's going to take people from all these different teams to get that going. But that also means it's going to have such a bigger impact too. When you can put it on there and say, boy, this new ERP or new program that we're thinking about, it's going to impact all of these different areas on here. That just means it's a greater impact for the community. So those are sort of just kind of the two highlights that really stuck out to me throughout this whole process, is just constantly realizing, the impact that we can have, and it's really being a tool for staff to tap into that and to realize, all the things that we do and all the things we get to do for the community.
Thank you, Josh. So just in terms of next steps, because, we got this work done and got a final report over to the CEO at the end of December last year. And but we wanted to make sure there's a sustainability plan around this, right? This is not just a piece of paper that disappears. How do we bring some continuity in this work? So post our release, we wanted to target an initiative where we can actually use this and in its true practice. So the ERP modernization project was something that came up, and the timing aligned, and we were able to really plug into our business capability model and start to look at what these processes, what these teams are, that should be considered as we go through this ERP modernization work for the next, year and a half, probably 2 years within the organization. We also are working on identifying some operational and service delivery gaps. So we are continually thinking through what does the future of work look like at CA. So this is really a tool that helps us tease that out. So as we sort of look at those opportunities into the next fiscal year, this is a tool that we're going to use to help identify those those operational gaps and any opportunities for improvement. We talked about using the tool for leveraging AI. My team is preparing AI guidance for release in the future for the organization. So that is laying some of the governing framework. But as part of that work, we want to look at where do we touch, right, with AI? What is the low-hanging fruit? How do we take step one to sort of, get to a mature state where AI is really a part of our fluency within the organization? And how do we identify those areas where we can approach that by using this model? And we plan on doing some continuous work with our new business process registry. So far, we've got hundreds of processes identified, and the goal is to continue identifying processes, put those through a process lifecycle management so we can make sure those are pretty much evergreen, right? And it really is just going to help the organization with its sustainability about what it does. We've put some governance structure around the business capability model, so we'll keep looking at it. For us, this was version 1, right? The organization is dynamic. Who knows? There might be a 10th defining area that comes along. We might subtract it. We don't take away anything at CA. But we are in the spirit of flexibility, so we wanted to make sure, things like AI and business insights did not originate when CA was formed, right? So we wanted to make sure in part of our governance structure that we account for how do we maintain this model going forward. Thank you.
So thanks, that was a great presentation. We're going to go to some board questions and comments now. Before we go, though, that was a ton of material, everybody. There's no way we're going to be able to get all of our questions answered tonight. I saw a lot of furious note-taking, so please, go ahead and ask some questions, but don't expect to get everything answered tonight. All right, so who would like to go? Karen?
RMSB, first of all, this is wonderful. So when you said you put governance around this, because one of the things about a capability model is the care and feeding of that capability model. And having run an SCPG at Care First, what is your, I guess there's two questions I have. What is the governance model for the care and feeding of this so that it doesn't become shelfware? And then number two, when you're talking about your process levels, how deep down are you going? Are you tying systems to these processes? So it's not just, I deliver customer service and I've got a human here, but what are the systems that are tied to that as well? Is that all integrated into the model? And I guess the last question I'll ask you, I'll let you answer in just a second, is I'm hoping this isn't all living on an Excel spreadsheet, but that would be fine, but.
Yes, so starting with the governance model, so we actually chartered, so we developed the charter, we identified team members to serve on this model, on this governance body internally. A lot of them are the folks who you see here with you. We've developed a cadence of meeting and really the structure of the things that we're going to be looking at, the opportunities that we need to look for to plug this model into, to monitor organizational changes so that we can apply those to the model, and a commitment really to keep the model updated based on the new information that comes. So I think that hopefully answers your governance piece. With respect to the sort of process end of it, so we've actually have a whole platform that we stood up. So no, this doesn't just live in a spreadsheet. And we actually, what you're seeing in front of you are what I think as level 1 processes, so these are just a high level. But we are at a point where we go all the way down, drill down to level 4 processes with that connectivity to what systems enable this specific process flows and steps and all that fun stuff. So.
Ashley, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, this is great. I'm definitely into, data and process standardization. So I was curious how, I know there was somebody up there who mentioned he's been at Columbia Association for a while, right? And just recently learned how much it is that CA does. How does somebody who has worked in open space for 10 years, right, find out about this, get involved in it? How, when somebody new is joining, like, what are you imagining that, to be sure that everybody who wants to be involved in it can, and also the opportunity to learn about cross collaboration, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, and some of the best ideas come from the opportunity to learn about what another department is doing. So that's really my question.
That's a great question, Ashley, and that's a question that the governance committee is going to wrestle with in terms of how we propagate this information across the organization. Luckily, we've got a subject matter expert who've done this at other organizations. Maybe, Rick, you want to lend some thought partnership?
Sure. So a big part of it is onboarding mechanisms. So introducing people to the capabilities and how they fit in. Looking at goal setting, objective setting, whether it's at an individual performer level or up to the board level, is using this model to ask questions about where is this impact going to show up. So the more you use it, the more you incorporate it into the fabric of how you work. People are very comfortable with org structures and org charts. This is a new map of how to think about the organization in terms of outcomes, in terms of capabilities, which all tie back to the things that this board is talking about, of goals, objectives, to how people get started and where they fit in. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anyone?
Thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. I've got a couple of concerns. My first concern is I don't quite see where accountability shows up. I see a line item, but I don't see the overall accountability of the processes. So I see a community planner at the same level as the president and CEO in completely different columns. So I'm not sure, and I don't see the board of directors anywhere on here. So the question I have, first question I have is what's the role of accountability here? How do we make sure all these processes are accountable and not just separate stovepipes that, okay, where does 8 report to? Where's 8 accountable to? And because I agree that in a hierarchy structure, that's simple. You look at the top and the buck stops with the president. But here, I don't quite see an accountability structure. And my second concern is this looks very complicated. And generally speaking, the more complicated things get, the more costly things get. And our annual charge bills are already fairly high, and I don't want to see them go even higher. So the question I have is, how would this help reduce costs in the organization and make things more affordable for our residents? Because the last thing I want to do is see the costs explode internally and make things even more expensive. So that's my second major concern is accountability and what the role of the board of directors is and the CEO. And also how this is going to help control costs.
I can speak to that. So accountability-wise, that doesn't change. I am responsible for the organization. This is also an internal project that was done. What we're presenting now is just for the board's information, so you can see how complex the organization is, how efficient it is, and how we operate. So that is important for the board to know. Second, the purpose, yes, this is super complicated. We are a very complicated organization. We are multiple businesses. We are multiple entities. Excuse me. The board and the public need to see that. So it's one thing to say, well, this looks expensive. No, not knowing this is expensive and a waste of money. Now knowing this, we know where we can find efficiencies. We know where we have redundancies. We know where we have gaps. So this helps us to lay the groundwork, and, as Armstrong said, this is version 1.0. This is the foundation. So next year we look at it again and we say, all right, version 2.0 could look a lot different than this. So depending on how we implement this and look at the organization, and excuse me, we talk a lot about the future. We are future focused here. What is the future going to be? What is this going to look like? What's the organization going to be in the future? We can't make those decisions without knowing where we're at right now.
Anyone have anything else? Bill?
All right, I just want to preface this with, I got about 3.5 minutes of free association nerding out here, because this is my first business capability model, okay? You got me. When I look at this kind of reminds me back, because I'm an old man now, it gets me back to my PMI days with work breakdown structures. This looks like a process breakdown structure, and I hope that that similarity rings true with some of us in the room here, and I hope I'm right on that. To me, the defining processes look iterative. They seem to circle back amongst themselves. There's a lot of feedback loop in those kind of processes, whereas the enabling is not. I hope I'm reading that right. I have a specific thing, the volunteer management, you guys have listed as the strategic focus as a community connection. I view our volunteers as a resource, and we may want to consider that as resource resilience. Something to take a look at, something to consider. It's just my 2 cents. It's my first capability model. I'm not sure if I'm right about that. I was also thinking a little bit about you were mentioning AI. It seems like putting this into an AI and start asking to look for efficiencies might be worthwhile given the complexity of it. It may come up with some surprising answers to clearly be validated and not trusted at first blush, but something to at least look at. I am strangely cautious that governance and compliance and civics engagement, those two defining processes, may result in having the exact same steps but in the opposite order. So just think about that. Josh, is that Josh? You were talking about how much we do, and I think that this is processes. This isn't work. This is this is the amount of how that we have. And that's how I kind of look at it. Sean said how, you said do. I think that there's an alignment there we got to work on. And then lastly, when I look at this, it looks like, I don't know how you guys set this up, but I'm a visual engineering guy. I see kind of an XY axis with this defining process, enabling process, and I'm thinking that maybe that beep was not for me, was it? There's a Z axis, which is the do, or this might actually be a polar scale kind of thing where we've got a vector, an arc from a reference axis, and then we go up into the Z dimension. So something to think about. Could be a cylindrical unit, could be conical, inverse conical. That may be helpful. So if you guys want to talk about that, I think that's really a good beer conversation, but I think it'll be a worthwhile beer conversation. Thanks, guys.
We're past time. Does anyone want to add 5 minutes?
I'll move to 5.
Okay. Sky, go ahead.
Yeah, I have 2 things. First of all, if a different task force had developed this with the same requirements, would they have come up with something really, really similar to this, or would it be totally different? Like, I assume it would be really similar because this is reality. And secondly, there are some white spaces on each page and some empty blue boxes. And I'm wondering, are those placeholders? Are they placeholders for the future, or?
With regards to it's really just design aesthetic. There was some processes that were more extensive than others, and some that were shorter. So where the process ends is where the process ends. But we do have the notion and realization that processes change and evolve. So our model will sort of be flexible as that occurs.
Reg or Delilah, do you guys want to hop in?
No, I'm good. It's interesting to listen to. Thank you.
Okay.
Good too. Thank you.
Jesus, she sounds terrible.
Michael, I have
I'll just jump in here. I think this looks great. I really appreciate all the hard work that went into it. This won't mean much to anybody but Sky and Reg maybe, but it really reminds me of like metals, unit metals, universal tasks list, JSIDs, all the types of things that the Army uses to break down what it needs to do. And I know how effective that is for keeping those the military on track. So this I think looks really effective. I'm thrilled to see this. So thank you for all the hard work that went into it.
Airborne.
Karen, second time.
Yeah, I want to say to my fellow board members that if you've never worked with this kind of thing before, it can be mind-boggling. I think Armsby and company did a really good job of presenting the information, and just listening to the comments from what people are saying, I think most people get the gist of it. It is very hard to present a continuous process improvement initiative to a corporation. It is a money saver, but there is a lot of effort and money that goes into it initially to get it stood up. And you will have people slinging arrows at you from all over the company saying, well, we can't get our work done because the SCPG just wouldn't improve our process improvement plan, and so our whole project, that is not true. I just wanted to ask a few basic questions. I'm a huge supporter of this. This will save us money. Sean is not wrong when he says if you don't do this, it is more expensive to not do it. The problem is that a lot of companies implement it, they don't institutionalize it, and everybody has to kind of be on board. And so it's really good to see Hunter here and Josh here who are contributing and they're sharing their experiences, because as a recovering business analyst, you have to go down and you have to talk to everybody, and you have to come down and talk to the customer service people down here and write down exactly what it is that they do. This is the detail that they're documenting. Joan gets on this system and does these things, and then you look at these things and you say, okay, Joan does all these things manually. What can we automate? You start looking to see what you can automate, and that is where your savings starts to come in. And is my system really efficient, or is it not? Is this, if I'm sitting there waiting 5 minutes for my system to respond, maybe I need a better system, maybe I need more memory, whatever it is. And Michael, I thought that you were a solution architect, so you might be familiar with some of this. Use cases are just little itty bitty pieces of what you're using on your laptops, all that kind of stuff that people in IT build for you to use to make your lives easier. So I would like to see the board support this for a long term. Like, I don't want to see in another 5 years, 10 years, when we have new leadership, things like that, that this gets shelved. This is something that should continue to evolve over the years, because I have been a witness to what happens when new leadership comes on board and they trash everything because they didn't create it. And this should be something that we have for a very long time, because I think everybody will find it helpful. And Armsby or whoever will be able to, you'll come to Armsby and say, we have this project. Sean will have projects that he's trying to approve, and you can immediately do an estimate of how much your project's going to cost. Because you hit a button and you'll see all the different areas that are impacted by the work that you want to do. So say Jeremy or Dan wants to do something. Jeremy has a dredging project. Click a button. You can see all the pieces and parts, how many people you need. Do I have what I need to do this project? You've been speaking
for 3 minutes now. Thanks.
Okay, well, that's what I wanted to say. Honestly, I thought you did a wonderful job. Thank you, guys. And, this is good work.
Okay.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to 8C, board governing documents, the operating procedures.
So John is here to kind of give a presentation on some updates to the board operating procedures and walk the board through them. If he's got his presentation up.
All right. Do you have that? Okay. Yes. So just by way of background, and this is in the memorandum that's in the packet under agenda item 8C. We've been going through this process for quite a long time on getting organization to our documents and our policies, consolidating, getting rid of obsolete materials. And the final part of this project is to update the board operating procedures, including the special rules of order and the governing documents, to reflect current policy and board operations. And the end product of that is going to be a fully updated board governing documents manual that will include the board operating procedures and appendices. Wonderful, thank you. And all the board policies. And the goal is to make these all consistent and accurate. So we've laid out a schedule here. We had the first reading of the updated board schedule last meeting. We had the second reading this tonight. And then tonight, we have the first reading of these board operating procedures. Let me go through a few key points on those, and there is a red line in the packet that you can see. So we have two main goals here. First, we want to update the operating procedures and the special rules of order. And those special rules of order were last updated by the board on April 25th of 2024. So that was almost 2 years ago. And we want them to accurately reflect the board policy and procedures. And then secondly, the second goal is to sunset certain outdated procedures and replace the 2017 governing documents, which we have now, with a holistic board manual that has everything in it. And that'll include these operating procedures and the board values. That's part of the manual. We're working on that, and a set of current board policies. And what we envision, we're doing an update on the website, and when that's all done, it'll be on the website, searchable, and we'll have a good consolidated schedule that's searchable, people can look at, transparent. You'll know exactly what the rules are and where to go. All right, so let me go to the board operating procedures. Most of the changes that are here, the lion's share, are really clerical, okay? And they're made to reflect current board procedures and not change them. So the first slide here that you see is an example of a clerical update. What do? We had too many CAs in there, so we remove a lot of this reference to CAs. We have board members capitalize both words. We make the second word lowercase, all right? Remove the hyphen from vice chair, to vice chair. And then we rewrote some sentences to be clearer and more concise. And if you look at this first example here, that's what we do. And again, the next slide, this is a rewritten sentence. I think it makes it more clear. You see when we talk about the small board rules, they're not followed. One of the problems is, they reference a version of Robert's Rules of Order that is now superseded. So what we did was we changed it to say the current existing edition. So if it changes, we conform to that policy. And then if you look, the next aspect is we update certain procedures. And looking at this slide, we're talking about, we basically eliminate the reference to work sessions because we really don't do those anymore. And then what we did to make it more efficient and more clear is, when we speak about resident speak out and the procedures, we have a series of appendices that are attached to this so that you can go and see what those policies are, and we can put them all in one place rather than scattered all over time, that you have to look back years and find. So that's the goal of what we're trying to do here. The appendices, well, here's another example on this slide is an example of the updated procedures. Rather than have the current system, we basically say, we're going to have an agenda for all meetings, like simple, to the point. That's what we do. That's the current topic. All right, updated procedures. We updated the agenda topics log to what we do now. So the red is stricken, and the agenda topics log is basically the bigger change there is we make the priorities strategic oversight or individual requests, which is really it's the current practice. That's what we do now. Again, we've simplified that greatly. The appendices that are attached are in one spot, and they rather than spread out, and you'll see A is electing the chair and vice chair, those procedures. B, Board Operations Committee roles and responsibilities. Then we get to the Audit Committee is Appendix C. Appendix D is the Risk Management Committee. Then F is those of you who are on the IAT board, the guidelines and guidance for you. Guidelines for closed meetings is Appendix F, and the guidelines for resident speak out is Appendix G. Next steps, what do we do? I mentioned the board values are part of the manual. We're still under construction. And those are basic that, we've been through before when we've had the educational sessions, duties and obligations, duty of care, duty of loyalty, confidentiality, but we want to consolidate those and make it all part of the manual. And then the manual itself, again, we're still going through that. We're trying to make accessibility to the information increase, to improve that process. One location, we want to have it digitally so that everybody can go. We want to have hyperlinks so that when you go to it, you can, boom, hit the link and go to something else. And then we can have, when we make changes in the future, it'll be streamlined, you know where to go, it'll be easier to go to. Finally, there are several policies that are obsolete, and so we would like to basically sunset those. And these are either covered by other places or not reflecting current practices. You see them here in this slide that's up now. And these were all covered by other aspects of the operating procedures. These are obsolete. We don't do them anymore, so there's no sense having them hang around. That's the goal of this. Again, it's a long-standing project. You remember we went through several votes trying to consolidate the policies. This has been years of, I don't want to say neglect, because I don't want to cast dispersions on others, but there was a lot of paper and it hadn't been updated. So we're trying to bring us into the new age here and make everything digital and efficient and up to date. And that's the goal. There's still some work to do. A lot of folks have worked on this. Julia, who is not here tonight, Julia Durand, has done a lot of work on this. Deb Bach. They literally have a standard meeting once or twice a week to work on this for a few hours. So it's been a lot of work, and we're trying to make it more consolidated and efficient, transparent, so that you'll have everything in one place, and the residents and the public can see that, and they can see readily what you do and how you operate. So that's what we have.
Thanks, John. Any questions or comments for John? Sky?
Yeah, do you want detailed comments from us tonight, or should we send them to you, or do you not want them at all?
No, I mean, look, this is what we've come up with, but obviously that's your job, if you want to change them and vote. I mean, you can give me comments now, and we can, again, this is the first reading, so we have to go through three. If you want to do that now, or you want to send me things and we can incorporate them next time, you want to talk about them. Again, the board has the final say. These are our idea of what reflects current policy. If you want to change the policy, I mean, I'll just give you an example. Right now, when you elect the chair and vice chair, you do it in secret. You might not want to do that. Seems to me that, a good argument can be made that you should have a public vote. But that's up to you, right? What's in there now is the current system, right? So if you want to leave that, that's fine. You want to change it, you make a motion, you vote, we'll change it. So however you want to work it, I'll be happy to listen We can make changes, but ultimately, you know, the idea is this is going to come up twice more. No vote tonight, and then, you know, in two more meetings, there'll be a final vote, and we'll have the procedures.
Ashley?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks. Like, I know this is obviously like a daunting, extensive process, so I certainly appreciate it. It sort of feels like it falls under what Armsby was covering, right, of us getting more streamlined with the process standardization. Nope, and I lost my train of thought. I just want to say like how I'm very excited that it's going to be available and searchable online. I know even being on the board, whenever you're looking for something, it can be difficult, let alone whenever the average resident, right, is trying to get involved or show up to speak out and wants to understand what our policy or procedure is for something. So I'm looking forward to that aspect. Thanks for all the work.
Eric?
So speaking of posting online, I think the one thing missing from this policy is text basically saying what we're posting online. So I think there needs to be a section on public notice of policies that are in effect. So we should add a section that says, that basically says that every policy that the board has passed is currently in effect be posted online. So currently if I go online, there's only a few, only basically a dozen policies that are listed, but there are plenty of other policies that we have that are in effect, such as the easement policy, the tot lot policy, a whole bunch of other policies that we have that are in effect that aren't posted online. So yes, this should certainly be posted online when it gets finally passed, but also every other board policy that we have passed and is currently in effect needs to also be posted online. So everybody is operating from the same sheet of music. So I will make a motion to add.
There's no motions. No motions. It's new business.
What? I made a motion for last new business.
Does anyone else have questions or comments?
Well, in that case, I'm still talking.
Anyone else have questions or comments?
Yeah.
Bill?
I've read through this like 2 times already. It seems like we need to spend a little bit more time with the town hall meetings. There's a section in here that says that meetings are meetings, work sessions are meetings, and then it says town halls. And it never says that town halls are meetings. I think by the HOA Act, we're there together, it's a quorum, we're conducting business. It by definition has to be a meeting. There's a section in there.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a definition of town hall. Town hall is a meeting convened for the primary purpose. It's on the board, so.
I'll find the reference and get back to you. Yeah, I just want to make sure we state that. The resident speak out portion of town hall meetings is fairly explicit, and I think it just should say that resident speak out shall occur. I'm not in agreement with the specificity that's listed in here right now. There was one other thing that I was concerned about here, but I'll have to get back to you on that. That's my first run through. I'll send you an email, John.
That'd be great, thanks.
Thanks.
Delilah or Reg, do you have anything?
No, not yet.
Karen? I'll kind of echo what people have been saying. I think this is a lot of great work has gone into this, and I really appreciate it. It's a lot of yeoman's work here. As I said earlier, I think we should look at getting rid of the board operations committee. And also, I agree with what John was saying, that adding transparency to the election of chair and vice chair would be a good change as well. All right, Eric, your second term.
So speaking of second term, I think this is a great opportunity to get rid of Section 2B, limits on debate. This restriction on the 2 times speaking is not helping the discussion of this board. It creates a situation where people feel like they've got to get it all in and spit out 5 different questions so they don't waste a turn that may not necessarily have anything to do with each other. So we get 10 questions spit out by one person, and the staff member tries to answer half of them if they can because they're all disparate questions. It prevents the back and forth that we used to have where we're able to really deliberate on a topic and really work through differences. It's getting in the way of finding common ground on this board. It's elongating meetings is people feel like they need to get their money's worth for their 2 times because they know after 2 times they're not going to get to speak again. So it creates this sense where people need to use all 3 times 2 minutes or 6 minutes, which just extends the meeting. So this is really a problem. And I think if we get rid of this constraint, we'll actually have better meetings. They'll actually be shorter because then people don't feel that pressure of, oh, if I don't use up my 3 minutes, I'm going to run out of opportunities to talk. So I might as well talk and keep using up my 3 minutes here. So I think that's important. And I'd like to get back to sort of the old style meetings where when residents would come for residents, because we could ask them clarifying questions. We could learn more of what they're saying. We could have those, that back and forth conversation with the residents. We've lost that this year. We've lost that camaraderie, that back and forth discussion amongst other board members. I mean, even today, like I have to address other members. My friend from Mr. Chair, my friend from Wild Lake, and we're not Congress, we're not the Senate, we're an HOA board. We've got differences, but I think we can work through our differences if we're not utterly constrained by all these
Eric, you have 10
limitations.
seconds.
Okay, I'm going to use up my 3 minutes because this is what this particular rule is causing. So yes, I used up my 3 minutes intentionally. Yes, these meetings are taking too long because of this rule.
Anyone else? Thanks, Eric. Anyone else? Scott, go ahead.
Sure. I tend to disagree with some of what was just immediately said. I think if we are limited in time and number of times to speak, that we will prepare our comments with more care and we will say the important things first. I have a comment about the 3-minute rule and everything with the BOC, but if we're going to do away with the BOC, that may be moot in the future, so I'll save that. But I think it's an exercise in leadership and dictation or whatever, if we can say briefly the important things and give an example or two rather than go on. Oh, and I agree with the predecessor's comments that if you're given 3 minutes to speak, you want to fill up the 3 minutes. I've noticed that myself.
Thanks, Guy. Anyone else? Bill, second time.
All right, couple of things really quick. Third thing, I found my bookmark. It's bottom of page 1, John. Very bottom, it says additional meetings of the board may be called by the board chair and or the president. I think we need to add in there also, and a majority of the board. If the majority of the board wants to call one, I think that's an important thing to do. Otherwise, it's just 2 people, and that's just, hamstringing the ability to have additional meetings. So that's an amendment I'd like to see. Generally, Eric, I want to say that I agree with you, and I don't agree with everything you just said, but I agree with you in principle. I do enjoy the back and forth a little better. But saying that, I also believe that in the past, it seems that particular method was at times abused or not applied well. I mean, not applied well is probably the better way to say it. And we need to, if we want to move back towards that kind of a meeting environment, that kind of atmosphere, we do need to figure out some ways to put some limits on things. And I'd be willing to talk with you in the future about that.
Eric, you've already used your 2 turns. Karen? Second time? Oh, no, it's your first time, Karen.
I just want to
No, Eric.
accept the
Karen, go ahead.
Wild Lake's offer.
Go ahead, Karen.
Well, I was going to say everything is timed, right? Everything, we have time. So you have 15 minutes for this topic, 10 minutes for that topic. So we did have limits on what we were doing. We were a much more deliberative body, and instead of speechifying, we could each hear what the other were thinking. I really appreciated hearing from residents. I feel like we've done this board has done everything it can to shut residents out of the conversation. We don't let the board talk to them anymore. We tell them to submit their testimony in writing, and it feels so stale and awful people, and people spend so much time preparing what they're going to say in their 3 or 5 minutes to us, and then we just sit here like bumps on a log, and can't ask them anything, no follow-up questions, which is just ridiculous, because everybody might want to hear what my follow-up question is. Everybody might want to hear what Sky's follow-up question is, and nobody gets to hear that. You can be like Michael and sit and respond to every single email that we get, but then the only reason I know that is because people forward things to me that Michael has written to them, and then I'm like, oh, Michael wrote that. Or if I've responded to someone, you guys don't see it. So, and because we can't talk to each other in email anymore, because it constitutes a quorum, and we might be having an illegal meeting. So I think we're really missing out on sharing the conversation with residents. We seem to want to take everything behind closed doors, and I think that the way we conduct meetings now, it just is it's not transparent, and the residents don't like it. They've made that clear. In our last town hall, they wanted to have a regular resident speak out, and when the board voted against that, they all gave up a cry of disbelief that we did not allow them to stand up at a mic and talk to us. So, yeah, I would like to see us change the structure of that. I'd like to see us be more deliberative. I'd like to see us engage more with the residents. I think that would be healthy. Was that my full 3 minutes, or do I have time left?
You got time.
Could I sing a song?
Ashley?
Yeah, since we're all commenting on the process that we're in right now, I just want to say I'm elated that the board meetings feel like they're more respectful of everyone's time, both the volunteer board members and the staff that are attending each of these. I'm also glad that there's not an expectation for staff to have to answer questions on the spot for topics that they were not given fair notice about. I'm also glad that there's no seemingly rehearsed back and forth sometimes with some of the resident speak out that can occur, and that we don't have to, how do I phrase this? I'm glad that we have an opportunity whenever they share their speak out by emailing us. Like whenever we have things in writing, it's a lot easier to address it sometimes versus when it's off the cuff, in being addressed in a meeting, right? Like we have an opportunity to have a much more thoughtful, researched response to it, again, because we come to these meetings prepared to talk about specific topics, and resident speak out isn't always pertaining to what those topics are. Yeah, in general, I'm pleased that, as Sky mentioned, right, you have to be a lot more thoughtful about what it is that you're going to say. And it also provides us an opportunity to get through a lot more necessary business for the board, which obviously all of us are aware in the past. Sometimes when resident speak out goes too long, we can't get through all of the topics. We can't get through everything that staff has prepared to share with us. And it feels a lot more respectful to everybody's time when we're able to stick to a schedule and the topics on the agenda.
Thanks, Ashley. Sky, you've gone twice already, sorry. Delilah or Reg?
I'll go ahead and say something unless Delilah wants to say something.
No, go ahead, Reg.
Okay. So I've had, and I know you're going to get tired of this, but I've had a number of members of the community from Long Reach and even some from outside Long Reach, Oakland Mills, Kinkins Drive-ins, other places at NCA, and they all question, why are we trying to silence members of the board? You probably won't agree with me, and that's okay. But that's what a number of people that I've spoken to said. They felt like, you know, members of the board are being silenced. There's only one opinion, and that's the only thing that counts. And if there's a deviation from that, they feel as though there's no such thing as freedom of speech in the board of directors. And that's a concern that they have. I understand the attempt, or, you know, the reason behind, saying, hey, you can only speak twice. I understand the time limitations as well. But I do think it's been taken to an extreme, and in many ways, it's I've gotten frustrated and said, well, you know what? why say anything? Because either someone across the aisle is going to laugh or smirk or, just it takes away that, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's have a discussion. I may not agree with what you say, but I'll listen to what you have to say. And sometimes you can sway me into saying, okay, I get it. All right, I'll go with you on that one. But when you start smirking or laughing or making fun of what's being said by any one of us, that really takes away from the purpose of this board, and it disappoints me. That's all.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, great. We're going to move on to long-term capital planning now.
All right. You're seeing a little bit of a theme here tonight, which is really good, in that we are forward-focused and planning for the future here at Columbia Association, and I think it's great, whether it's governance, whether it's kind of how we operate, or now how we plan for the future with our long-term capital planning. It's exciting times. So as you know, this is part of one of our organizational goals. This is year one of the 2-year goal to evaluate our assets here at Columbia Association. And plan for the future. So Jeremy's here tonight to give you a presentation on an update on where we're at to date. I will say, we're all about collaboration and teamwork here at Columbia Association. So we have a team, internal team, high level to work on this. So Jeremy, our VP of Community Operations, Dan Burns, our Senior VP of Programs and Services, Sean McCullum, our Senior VP and CFO, and Josh Bennett. Wow, he's involved in everything, huh? Right. Our construction management project manager. And this is the group that we've put together to evaluate what we have in place and how we're going to move forward. And Jeremy's here to kind of update you on that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Sean. And as Sean indicated, it's going to pick up on some themes we've already talked about this evening, and sort of relating to the age of the community, the maturity of our infrastructure, having a strategic perspective going forward, being efficient with resources. It really ties in a lot of things we've already been talking about this evening. So just to run through a quick agenda, have a little background, some context of the initiative for sort of some of the rationale behind a long-term capital plan. Talk a little bit about some of the value aspects of a long-term capital plan in terms of its rationale. Some facility replacement examples that have taken place in the community, some facility replacement examples that have been undertaken by other landowners, other portfolio owners in the community as well, just sort of providing some examples of where this is already happening and has been happening within the last 10 or 15 years. We're going to do a quick overview of our portfolio replacement analysis that staff has conducted, just to put some round numbers around looking forward, around what happens with our facilities when they need to be replaced, or when there needs to be a major renovation 20 years from now, 30 years from now. What's that going to cost, and how can we scale that across our building portfolio to get a rough order of magnitude of that cost, so that we can then move forward in the coming year to develop some strategic guidance around what the future is going to look like for this community. Sure, it's all aging. It's all hitting 50, 60, 70 years old. It's at the end of its useful life. We're hitting obsolescence for our major infrastructure in the community. And in that time, in that 60 years, there's been major advancements in building codes, in safety issues, in energy efficiency of this infrastructure. Basic code requirements like parking, for example, that are real constraints or aspects around how we manage our building portfolio. And we've grown. The community has changed significantly in those 60 years. Higher density development, the community is becoming built out. There are not open vacant parcels like there were even when I moved here 20 years ago. There's competition for services now. We're not the only game in town, as Dan mentions regularly when he talks about programming. There's real things to think about how we offer our services to the community in an effective way. And in limited space for new development opportunities. And those, I've been pulling up the satellite photos for you guys. This is another round of it. So this is the Columbia Mall from 1971. There's Lake Kit there on the right. There's acres of forest right there. And then 2024 is a shot of where the mall is right now in terms of how that's developed over time. It's radically changed. And so we're trying to think about, and just sort of example, what would that photo look like in another 60 years? How different will that be? How much more vertical will downtown get? There's lots of plans that Costello has for facilities, that Howard Hughes has for other parcels. This community is changing and growing. So we're trying to respond to that. So in terms of the rationale for this initiative, I think the key word for me when I was looking at this a little bit ago is the word strategic, right there at the top line. How are we being strategic in managing our building portfolio in an effective and responsible way for multiple reasons? These include infrastructure optimization, consolidation for efficiency, prioritization of investments, again, being very strategic in how we manage our resources for the community, and then reconciling short-term improvements with the long-term plan. So keying on that last statement, you know, if we know in 20 years there's going to be a major change to a major building that we have like the athletic club, that will impact how we make investments near term to be efficient in how we use our resources. Fiscal planning, so that we're forecasting to align funding, proactive data-driven decisions, how we manage our resources effectively in a strategic way. Capital reserve, right? Those are key terms. How can we start thinking about this to have reserve funding to start paying for some of these initiatives going forward? And then amenity resilience, you know, intentionally reconfigurable spaces. As I know really well, Dan, Josh, who works in our facilities, the Supreme Sports Club was originally the Supreme Court, right? And so you can see the vestiges of that building that was all racquetball courts, and that has constrained how we've used that space. It provides limitations, you know, so there are pieces about making sure we have the infrastructure in place in 20 years from now, 30 years from now to serve the community in an effective way. Making sure our facilities are robust, that meet new building codes, that are efficient, that will really serve the community for the long term. And then just some examples of, you know, I mentioned the last 10 or 15 years where CA has actually started implementing some of these concepts of, we realize the facility is no longer serving the community in an effective way. It has reached obsolescence. And so we need to start from scratch. Hobbs Glen Golf Clubhouse, this project was in its planning phases when I first started with CA. I was in those community meetings in the upper loft. Half Price Burger Night, right? Who's been to Half Price Burger Night? Was there before the original, right? Okay, so, but that building was no longer serving the community and needed to go. So the choice was made to bulldoze it and build something new and great that serves the community in an effective way. Dorsey Church Meeting Room was completely knocked down and rebuilt in 2016, except for like one masonry wall. The Long Reach Tennis Club is another example. The Owen Brown Tennis Bubble was way beyond its useful life. It was not serving the community as an indoor tennis space. The decision was made that we need to intentionally replace that structure with a new and effective, highly efficient, deliver that service to the community with the Long Reach Tennis Club, right? And so these are historical examples where CA is already starting to do this with our infrastructure and doing major replacement projects. And because other building owners, other property owners are in the same boat as CA when they built their buildings in the 60s and 70s. They're also reaching the end of their useful life. They're also becoming obsolete for many reasons. The village centers are a great example. Redevelopment of those community assets, it's time. They're no longer functional. When I walk around, the portions of Wild Lake Village Center that were not redeveloped, Bill, I feel like I'm going back in time sometimes, right? I'm like, oh, like, why didn't Kimco just knock out the rest of it, right? Enterprise communities. So I think the third of those right now is being in the planning stages for redevelopment. The easements associated with that project are underway. Yeah, fourth, there we go. And they look great. Like, those new residential structures look fantastic relative to what was there. So the original component of that infrastructure, the original infrastructure that Enterprise managed was obsolete. It was no longer serving the community. It needed to start from scratch to get to the next level. The Columbia Flyer Building, right? That was knocked down several months ago in anticipation of the Source, you know, a new resource building that's coming in the community. So this is happening. This is sort of indicative of where Columbia is in its maturation as a community. Everything was built in the 60s, 70s. It's starting to age out and need to be replaced. And so recognizing that reality and us in the facility side sort of seeing it every day in our buildings that we go into, we need to start thinking about this in a strategic way. And so our portfolio replacement overview, this is sort of just some initial steps of getting a handle on what this means, and especially what some of the cost aspects are going to be and how can we plan for that in a strategic way. So our team undertook a building portfolio analysis where we basically took core details of our building portfolio, like square footage, age, did some research around what's current practice and standards for costs for total renovation or total replacement or major renovation from a dollars per square foot perspective. We really work to customize the analysis based on the reality that some of our facilities are atypical, like the swim center, high dollars per square foot, much different than a neighborhood center, for example, in cost to build. So we try to be as accurate as possible in working on some of these cost forecasts for this portfolio analysis. We leverage a 60-year replacement threshold, which is sort of industry standard for when buildings start to reach obsolescence. We also conducted a high-level condition assessment within our team of subject matter experts, basically just looking at our buildings' sort of classical attributes around structural, electrical, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, for example. And so, we ready for some costs? Yes? Okay. All right, settle. Let's be okay. We'll get through it. So we started to really run this analysis and look at all of our facilities. So there's 72 different assets throughout our building portfolio. And so this is just sort of a blow up of the analysis that was conducted as just sort of a representative sample. So you see the individual facility, the year it was built, total demo and replacement in the sort of third column over, and total renovation costs. And then we included sort of a rough forecast of years out for 30 years, theoretically, for when we could check the box to replace it. And then the costs all the way to the right are a theoretical sum of the cost of replacement or renovation for those facilities if they were checked in that box. So that's just sort of illustrative of what the analysis looked like. And then these are sort of just all the tables. I'm not expecting everybody to actually be able to see them and read them, but we wanted to show in totality what the analysis looks like. Again, it's just sort of illustrative of what the extent of in terms of the facilities, the year built, total demo and replacement cost, and then total renovation costs for our entire building portfolio. So this is sort of a theoretical exercise of what total cost would be for these actions for these facilities. And so, getting to the key point here in terms of the total overall cost. So for all 72 of those facilities, based on a 30-year projection summary, so the total cost this is, again, portfolio-wide for all of our facilities, all the assets that we have. Demo and replacement costs for all the facilities over the 30 years is about $376 million. Major renovations come in at about $269 million over that 30-year period. Now, some key caveats and context to those projection notes. These are all in present dollars. The inflation component could be significant, but we wanted to keep it simple at this time and keep it in present dollars. The other key aspect of this analysis are these are theoretical in-kind replacements. So it's like for like, square foot for square foot. There's a lot of variability that could happen in the future in terms of design changes. For example, when the Williams study was done on the swim center, there are multiple versions of the replacement for the swim center where it was even doubled in square footage and therefore the cost doubled. So just to make sure a reference point, this is all exact same square footage replacement, like for services. And the other piece of this too is while demo and replacement is more expensive, you're not getting the same life cycle out of that facility in the end for the next 60 years. And that's sort of a key piece of this as staff and what we're trying to do to recognize where the community is in its maturation. And we're kind of at a pivot point. We're kind of at an inflection point around, we've done a really great job at maintaining our facilities in terms of, fixtures and lighting and mechanical systems, but the core infrastructure of those buildings, structural, the electrical wiring, the plumbing, it's at the end of its life. And we need to start thinking about the next 60 years. What's the community going to look like in the next 60 years? What are some opportunities for efficiency to really start planning in a strategic way to serve the community? And then, I just wanted to throw in, some modern community facility examples. There's some really strategic and interesting efficiencies that can be gained going forward in the future around where building technologies are. I was talking with Josh earlier today about the neighborhood centers that are all essentially the same structure in many cases, right? It's a tiny neighborhood center on the front side. The back side is the bathhouse for the pool, right? Going forward, is there an opportunity to leverage modular construction off-site, where it's built in pieces, really cost-effective, really efficient, really energy efficient, and they're essentially the same structure, the same footprint. We reutilize the wire, the electrical supply, the water supply, the sanitary sewer, and it's something we crane in place, right? There's so many opportunities that can be realized in the future, 15, 20 years from now, to recreate these services and amenities for the community in an effective and efficient way, and we're trying to get a handle on that with this initiative next year. So looking at next steps. So for fiscal year 27, the budget that was just approved, there's funding in there right now to bring on board a consultant to help us do this work. So for us, some of the next steps for actually implementing it in the next fiscal year, finalizing the scope of work. We already have a draft of the scope of work prepared. That's queued up. That was sort of one of our steps as staff to initiate this process, is get a handle on the scope of work. And key aspects of that scope of work is determining future community needs, looking at some realities around facility use and financial optimization. How are we effectively using the square footage we have of building spaces, and there's a way to stack some of those services to be more efficient in the future. Really looking at facility costs and accessibility. That's a key piece of this. Accessibility is something we really prioritize as an organization. And there's an opportunity to address some of those core issues that we just can't because of the nature of our infrastructure now. Again, accessibility wasn't really a component in facility or building design 60 years ago. So there's some inherent issues around that. And then starting to generate funding models, really looking hard at how are we strategically going to do this in an efficient way to serve the community, and then how are we going to pay for it, right? And then once we're all settled on the scope of work, we actually issue the RFP, in the next several months to get the consultant on board to do the work. Key process details of that effort next year: community engagement, community meetings to talk about this. What are the priorities? What's some of the vision the community has for the future for our amenities and our resources? We're going to have a broad perspective looking at all facilities and all properties. Are there some efficiencies that can be gained with the sports park, for example, or some other parcel that we have that could be redeveloped into a new amenity or service offering that we haven't thought of, but the consultant can, looking at a high level, for example. Sort of everything will be on the table as part of this analysis to look for how we can strategically manage our assets and our facilities, our building portfolio in an effective way to serve the community 50 years from now, to get a sense of that. And then identify amenity optimization opportunities. How can we be more efficient in delivering these services, reflecting changing building codes, reflecting changing demographics of the community, for example. Things continue to get more and more expensive, building codes. Health codes, for example, continue to become more rigorous and expensive to maintain. How are we going to address that going forward in the future with our community service needs? And that's it. That's a quick summary of where we are. I hit everybody with a lot. I know those questions are coming up, but yes.
So before we hop into questions, just a reminder to everyone that, this is the beginning of the process and the content of the plan isn't developed yet. And so to make sure we scope our questions correctly. Karen?
Yeah, Jeremy, thank you very much for that presentation. Some of those buildings were built in the 1800s, so I can't imagine we're going to replace those. Those seem like they might be historic, the ones especially on Blood Lake.
Correct.
The barn, the boathouse.
Yep.
And do they have bathroom facilities? Because I've never been on the barn. I don't think they
Well,
do.
so you'll notice those were, yes, there was not a replacement option. We recognize that, but there was a renovation option for those particular historical facilities.
And I want to make a suggestion to the board about how we go about this, because I like community engagement, obviously. When we did the play area pilot, I thought that was a magnificent way to engage the community, get feedback. The response to the survey that we put out was the best response we've ever gotten to any survey, because we put all of the survey QR codes at the play areas, and everybody loves that. They just, we saw the King's Contrivance play areas. They were just in Oakland Mills. Jason just came by to present what we're going to be doing behind Camelback Lane. Everybody likes that. There's total buy-in from the community. So I would like to see for this capital improvements, I would like to see something similar to that where we have, if Oakland Mills could be the pilot for that, we would love it. Come in and look at our buildings. There's nothing architecturally significant except for the barn maybe, but like how we set our priorities and how we go forward, have a strategy and a policy tied to that. I think that would be a wonderful way to get the community involved. And Armsby can write the process for it.
Right, with some AI help, right?
Eric?
First, if we get all these slides online, that'd be helpful. And going forward, I'd appreciate if these slides were included in the packet so I could review them ahead of time. Could you go back a couple slides? Is that possible?
I can.
You can.
Armsby can.
Armsby, we're having the technical issues.
Yeah,
So
okay,
what's your question?
Okay, so basically, it's important that this is not just a one-time process. This needs to be a continuous process. And this also needs to link in with the capital budget. So what I'd like to see is, so I know you had a sort of a matrix that showed the next sort of 3 years out, and then you showed all the buildings. What I think would be helpful is to show sort of a 10-year plan of, okay, over the next 10 years, these are the facilities that need either significant renovations or replacement, and then try to estimate that cost across. And then from there, that needs to link into, the capital plan, but we also need to figure out how to fund that. So what would be the plan to create a reserve account to make sure that that is funded going forward? So how do we fund the next 10 years? And then this becomes sort of a continuous process because, okay, we update it every year with the 11th year, the 12th year, the 13th year, and then we can adjust the reserve fund accordingly. So we know exactly how much we need. So obviously you look at a number like 376 million, well, that's a big number, and that's the 30 year of everything. But if we break this down into 10-year chunks and those get broken down into 1-year chunks into the capital plan, it becomes a little bit more palatable. It becomes a little bit easier to digest. And it also allows the board to say, when the budget comes, like, okay, I see where this capital plan is coming from, because it's coming from the CIP, and that's the 10-year plan, and this is how it's going to get funded, and that all sort of comes together. Whereas now, without this, we see a capital plan, like, oh, we just need this or that or something else, and it's almost like a surprise. What do we need? 15 million this year, or 10 million, or 20 million? And being able to flesh this out in a repeatable process, I think, will provide more certainty, and it'll also allow us to sort of average out those costs and be able to plan in the future.
Can I speak? Yeah. So, as Jeremy mentioned, this is phase 1 of the long-term capital plan. So next year is phase 2, where we work with a consultant, and that's where we identify what the capital needs are for Columbia Association moving forward. This is just demo and replace or renovate. Like, we're not going to do that to 72 facilities. That's just not going to happen. So next year when we come back, yes, we're going to come back with a definitive plan. This is what we want to do. These are buildings that we will like to renovate. These are new buildings. And the community is going to provide the feedback to say, yeah, you know what, like, we don't want racquetball courts anymore, so we need more broad-based buildings. So next year at this time, or within a year, like, we'll be back with a more definitive plan for the capital that will be 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out. As far as as along the lines of funding, Sean's going to be back at the next meeting to talk about some forecasting we're doing to show that, $376 million is not affordable, but there's some affordability things that we can do over the next 5 to 10 years to make some of these projects palatable for the community, affordable for the community, and helps the community grow. It can't stay stagnant with aged facilities and expect to have the same participation in the community, the same community involvement. So different generations want
less to demo and completely rebuild than to renovate. That was an interesting number I saw. And I'm looking forward to reading all the rest of them in detail. I think there should be a little bit of kind of reminder of how we got to where these buildings are. Everything that was built up to 1980 was then put on a loan that CA had to pay off, and that was an $8 million corporation with a $30 million loan that they had to pay off, and we did it in 30 years. If we're $80 million now, we have a $300 million loan. the scale is orders of magnitude different, but it seems to be the same kind of path. And I'm not recommending that we take out a $300 million loan. I'm just saying that some context might help some of the residents understand this is how it got built the first time around. It was haphazard. It was done last minute kind of stuff. And we weathered through it and it was successful. I think with proper planning and clear-eyed kind of vision, we can do this much more efficiently and work through a series of plans and 5-year and 10-year plans to get to where we want to go. I think we need to use the language of investment in the neighborhoods and villages, not just demo and replacement. I think that would be much more welcoming to the folks that live in the different areas of Columbia. If we're investing $15 million in a new swim center, that sounds a lot better than we're demoing the swim center, right?
Noted.
But beyond language, I like the structure here, and I'm excited to see next steps. So thanks for a good first effort.
And I'll note it was definitely a team effort, as Sean mentioned at the beginning. We're all involved in it.
The entire world.
Yes.
Anyone else? So I'll just say one thing that would help me, and I'm sure it's going to come in the forecasting and everything else, but I assume that, I'm glad this slides up, I assume that there's other capital costs over the next 30 years other than the facilities. And so just understanding what those projections are, I know he just did a ton of work to come up with these projections, but what those projections are would be obviously very helpful to see alongside this. Okay, we'll go ahead and, did you want something else, Eric?
Yeah, I move to table the rest of the agenda and adjourn.
Okay, there's been, Ashley and Reg, I'm not sure if you heard that, but Eric moved to table the rest of the agenda and adjourn. So we're going to go ahead and vote on that. Ashley?
No.
Bill?
No.
Delilah has left. Can we note that Delilah left sometime around 10? Eric?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Reg?
Yes.
Sky?
No.
And I am a no. Motion fails. We're going to move on to the Andy Stack acknowledgement.
Yeah, so there's a letter in the packet about a request to acknowledge previous board member Andy Stack. And he stepped away from the board after 44 years of consecutive service. So the Owen Brown Community Association would like to permanently commemorate Andy's contribution to the community. One option is naming the Owen Brown Community Center in his honor. And that is the request for the board to consider. But this is a letter from June 6, 2024.
Any discussion? Karen?
Does Andy actually want to be recognized? That would be very surprising to me that he actually wants something like this.
Anyone else? Eric?
How much does this cost?
Can you address that?
It depends, it just says he wants to be recognized, so we don't know what we have to determine what the signage would be that's agreed on by, yeah, it would.
Anyone else?
I've got my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ashley.
It's okay. Yeah, I had the opportunity to serve with Andy for a while, and he was a godsend just in terms of all of the information that he had available to us, the continuity, the various documents on topics that have been discussed at various iterations of the board. Yeah, he's been 40, you said 44 years, right? Like, it's crazy how long somebody could participate with Columbia Association and volunteering in the community. In general, I'm not a fan of naming buildings after folks, but that's because it's usually tied to them purchasing it. So the fact that we have the Maggie Brown Welcome Center, right? Love that, support it. And I think Andy Stack is in a similar boat as that in terms of all of the life minutes he spent over decades supporting our community.
Before Karen has her second turn, anyone want to go first? Sky, go ahead.
Yeah, would these changes be financed through the village funds or through CA funds? Because, do you know about that?
That has not been determined.
Bill, were you trying to hop in?
Sure, I'll hop in. In that I hail from Wild Lake, and we hold our meetings at the John Slayton House, named after the first president of CA, although it was named because of his untimely death. We certainly know about naming in Wild Lake, and if we're going to name a building after somebody in Columbia, I think Andy would be high on the list of people who would be deserving of that honor. I'll just stand on that. Thanks.
Reg, did you want to hop in?
I like Andy, and Andy's been a friend for a while, for a good long time. I'm not like Karen. I'm not sure he'd be all that excited about it. I think he's kind of under the radar type of guy. But hey, if he would like this honor, and it is an honor, then I can support it. But, I just want to make sure. I don't want to do anything to embarrass him and make him feel uncomfortable, because he is a really good guy.
Okay, Karen, you want to?
Yeah, I was going to point out the reason where this building is named after Maggie Brown is because she also died. She was a beloved member of the community, and there are numerous stories about when she first moved to Columbia because of the integration of Columbia. But the fact of the matter is it's a memorial to her, and Andy is very healthy last time I checked.
Eric, second time.
I hope we're not trying to create early memorials for people. that would not be good. But yeah, I had the pleasure of co-chairing this board with Andy, as I mentioned earlier. He's great to work with. Even though we disagreed on certain things, we were able to co-chair this board very successfully and get things passed and get things done. And we were able to co-chair with a sense of civility, and we were able to co-chair it and encourage board deliberation. And I think that's important. I think that's something Andy would like. But again, I'm not sure this is something he'd want, because he was, I haven't talked to him about it, but he's generally one that liked to be behind the scenes and making sure that the process worked correctly. And he's definitely cared about the community. And I don't think he wanted things to be about him. He wanted things to be about everyone. So that's where I've got the concern.
Okay. Bill?
Just last accounting there of things named after CA presidents. We do have the Kennedy Gardens, which have been named and been successful for many years, named after Pat Kennedy, who is in Missoula, Montana, and living healthy himself. So,
Sky, go ahead.
Yeah, we do not have to name the building the Andy Stack Building or the Andrew Stack Building. We could, if you're really concerned about his perhaps being embarrassed by this honor, we could name it just the Stack Building, because that's a more common name, and people wouldn't connect the two as much as if it were the Andy Stack Building.
Thanks, Guy. I think this is a good idea. Andy has been a tremendous asset to the community, and I think honoring him is a good idea. Okay. We are now on to questions only for state and pre-filed legislation. Okay, any questions about Ann Arbor Trust Report? All right, any proposed new topics? All right, chair's remarks. Really quick, as we all know, Columbia was founded on principles of racial and socioeconomic integration. And with that in mind, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that February is Black History Month and encourage everyone to reflect on the contributions of all the Black residents and employees of CA, people who have served on the board, served on village boards, served in leadership roles with CA and our county governments, our schools, sports programs, local businesses, and everyone else who's helped contribute to the community. So Just wanted to say that for Black History Month. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.